The stars, I think, are the ones that would be the best for the meta. Give the Flame Strike a buff, give the Knight a buff, give the Town Hall a buff. Now, I think basically all of these changes would be good and safe for the meta. But I think those would be the most important. Farseer, especially the Farsight change, I think would be really good. Great Hall, Expos in general. Dreadlord change. Oh, I forgot to put a star here, but also here, star for better expansion. All of these Knight of Heroes need to be changed. Literally all of them, badly, need to be changed. And this one here, probably my most important change. The Dryad attack upgrade change. Tree of Life, this one's also really cool. 20 less lumber. And yeah, lots of heroes here, neutral heroes being enabled. Many of them, basically all of them, seem too weak. Clarity Potion, I think that would be great for triple hero play. And yes, please. Oh, maybe this is the thing that I'm wishing for the most. Please give us more new items for this godforsaken camp with only 3 drops. Alright boys, here we are. I promised in recent weeks that I was gonna do again a patch suggestion video. It has been roughly 6 months since Blizzard updated the game. We had the PTR cycle, feedback was given, and so on. And we're nearing that new 6-month mark where we've gotten used to new patches coming out from Blizzard. We don't know exactly if this is gonna happen, but this has kind of been the pattern that we're expecting. Neo gave his thoughts already a couple of days ago. Most of those I agree with in concept. He rather, I would say, focused a little bit more on issues rather than giving specific suggestions. I'm going to give a lot of suggestions and also try to vocalize what I think the issues are that we have right now. Of course, there's 2 sides to this coin. One is fixing the balance issues in the game, and I think there are some of them, but I think that's the rather simplistic and boring way to approach a new patch. I think the more interesting way is to encourage, enable new playstyles that can oftentimes then also solve balance issues. So these are my goals for my patch suggestions. So the first one is the most obvious, and I think that's the one that nobody can disagree with. Enable and buff all the underpowered heroes. Right? We see all the heroes all the time, the same ones. DK, Lich, AM, MK, Demon, Naga, lots of Demon Naga, and Blademaster, and Shadowhunter. And it's nice to see them, but we also like to see other heroes. There are some heroes who are way, way, way weaker than others. Alchemist, for example. POTM, for example. Even Keeper, I would say. Dreadlord. And I address all of the heroes in my change that I think clearly need some help with buffs. And not just buffs, also some reworks on spells in some regards to give them more potential and more role applicability, possibly. Second point, also buff the underrepresented, and you could also call them underpowered units. Witch Doctors come to mind, Demolishers come to mind. Fairy Dragons also come to mind, although I didn't touch the Fairy Dragons. I didn't know how to handle them, actually. But many of those units I will try to address. The third one is enable more expansion play. Now, this is the first controversial point, I believe, in my presentation. And it won't be the last one. Just wait until you see the changes. I think that Warcraft 3 is way more interesting, dynamic, and exciting to see when it involves more resources. 2 bases, ideally, maybe even 3, but mainly 2 bases, that allows for more tech transitions, it allows for longer games, it allows for more exciting back and forth. The really cool thing about expansion is also, while it is very rewarding later, it exposes you to a moment of weakness. It's a bit of a risk-reward. When you go for the expansion early game, there's a lot of tension for the opponent to do something against this. We see this especially in Undead versus Human. In general, every time Human fast expands, there's always tension to do something to try to punish the opponent. Then there's a lot of skill expression. If you can defend really well and you force back the opponent without taking too much damage, as the expanding player, you might get ahead. If you're the attacking player, then you can get ahead by doing big damage and outplaying your opponent. This is how often Night versus Undead, for example, Undead versus Human, for example, gets decided these games. Both try to expand early game, both test each other, and both then will discover together against each other who is stronger and who deserves to win more. If we play just 1 base versus 1 base, especially tier 2 against tier 2 only, both players are strong pretty much at the same time, with some exceptions, and attacking into the enemy main base is oftentimes a mistake. So we just creep up the map, and then there's a stalemate with the map being crept. Those are kind of the most boring games. If expansions are involved, there's always reason to attack. There's always need to defend. There's always back and forth, and there's always dynamics in the game. That's my opinion. I've noticed also that not everyone agrees with this opinion, and some people more prefer the 1 base playstyle. This is certainly a matter of opinion, obviously, But I want to make my case as well with one recent example we had. So, Orc versus Human is most of the time one base versus one base. It used to be pally rifles, not anymore. Now it's more Archmage into either rifle play or more breaker play. Lots of one base, lots of creeping, not much interaction. This game here was a break from the norm, and it was amazing. This was just 2 or 3 days ago. Lyn versus Sock. Now, it starts with fast expansion. We're on Autumn Leaves here. Sock fast expands, and you can see Lyn is forced to attack. He wants to look for weakness. He wants to look for damage early. He wants to keep the game even. He's going tier 2. He'll be counter-expanding as well later, but he's poking. He's prodding. He's testing the opponent. This is what we want to see. On high level, we want to see a test of skill between the two, not just a test of who can creep better and faster. They're testing each other. I think this is a very exciting start to the game already. Sock defends really well over here, and the game goes on. Expo comes up. And we keep on going. And it's very interesting where this game goes, because at some point the Orc counter expands. We see a retrain into Blizzard. Sock plays a very late game turtle style with Griffins. And again, Lyn is the onus is on Lyn here to be aggressive, to try to punish Sock as much as he can before his ultimate army, so to speak. The Griffin army is ready with all the upgrades and everything. Lyn has full map control for a long time. Sock has to be creative about how he wants to deal with that, how he wants to still be active, and he's playing from behind for a long time. I'm going to have to skip ahead a lot here because we don't have time to watch all of this game. Lyn even gets up to a third base, but at some point Sock gets really strong and finds the will to fight, and finally feels strong enough with lots of heal scrolls and so on and so on. And this could have even been a third hero possibility here for Lyn. And look at the armies. Look at the armies. We got Bloodlust, we got Berserkers, we got Kodos, we got big armies, big levels, big items. We got a very diverse, well, not a diverse army for the human here. That's going to come on the next map. But there's so much potential for the players here to do something, to get active, and not just to look for 50 supply timings. There's way more depth, in my opinion, with this strategy. I think Sock ends up winning this game. No, wait. No, he does. Ends up winning this game with the Masked Griffins, which is still very under-discovered by the Orcs of really how to beat this, because this certainly is not the meta. Orcs don't really know how to face this anymore, because nobody really does it. Anyways, this was map 1. Map 2, it's another fast expansion. MK first this time, but a very different outlook. Gonna have to skip a bit ahead here, otherwise, we're stuck in here way too long. But look at this army. We got a Blademaster third. We got Witch Doctors this time. We got Witch Doctor Master Training, Tauren Master Training, Shaman Master Training, crazy armies. The human army also has lots of Master Training, triple hero on both sides, wild fights, and high level action, lots of AoE, super fun back and forth. This game goes to Lyn with ultimate late game Orc tech, you could say. Then map 3 is looking similar again. I think this was another Griffin game. Yep, and map 4 was tier 3 again, caster again. Sock wins this one, this time with casters, where he didn't do it before on Tidehunters. So it seems to be going back and forth. And then map 5 even, it's a fast expansion again. This time Lyn plays way more aggressively. This time, he doesn't go for ultra late game, ultra heavy tech and such, but rather he goes very aggressive with raiders to attack the expansion, try to go all in. Sock realized very well what was coming, went for heavy towers, but the raiders with good upgrades, with pillage, Lyn is able to break him here. So this is to show, if Fast Expo is played, there's lots of branching paths that can go into the mid-game and late game. If we play one base versus one base, there's normally one best strategy, very often one best creep route, and we follow that path for the most part. The games are very predictable. In two base versus two base, in Fast Expo meta, I think the game is way less predictable. Way more options are available to the players, and also the armies are bigger, the heroes are higher level, the game goes longer, it's more exciting. This is my opinion. This is my take on the meta. I also find it weird that Warcraft 3 seems to be the single RTS game where expanding has so little relevance. Like, if you think about RTS, real-time strategy, what's it about? You build a base, you build an army, you fight your opponent with your army, and may the better man or woman or orc or night elf win. But also, in RTS, normally it's about building, about, growing an economy, growing a base, about expanding, so to speak. Being stuck on one base, I think, is weird for an RTS. Now, it doesn't have to be like StarCraft 2. I'm not really up to date with StarCraft 2 meta, but certainly that they do expand there. I remember when I watched last time, they had like 5 bases, 6 bases. It doesn't have to get that crazy, okay? It doesn't have to be 6 bases for Warcraft 3. It gets perhaps a bit too wild, with heroes also involved and everything. But at least 2 bases, in my opinion, that should be the baseline. Again, I know not everyone agrees with this. Some people more like 1 base play. But I will say my view is that 2 base play, expo play is way more exciting. So, just to show you my reasoning here. Next point. Encourage more diversity through more tier 3 incentives. Tier 3 enables a triple hero. Tier 3 enables mastercasters. Tier 3 enables lots of other units and other upgrades. Tier 3 just enables way more of the toolbox that is available to every race, to every player, to every strategy. Much like expansion play, I think Tier 3 play makes the game way more interesting, way more deep, and way more exciting and cool also in the things that you can do with them. And then lastly, of course, one thing that has to be addressed as well in a new patch is balance. And balance is not perfect right now, if you ask me. I said this before, in fact. I think this is kind of the worst patch we've had in a while. With good intentions, the outcomes weren't that great, in my opinion. I'm going to get to who I think, which are the problematic matchups later, because I have slides for all the different races. But yeah, there are a lot of imbalanced matchups right now, in my opinion, especially for the humans. Speaking of which, here are the humans. What are the current human issues? First of all, Archmage first is too prevalent. He seems to be the only hero right now that works as a first hero. If our goal is to have an interesting strategy game with lots of diversity and depth, then you want to have different strategies. Now, I see this one point being made a lot by chat, and I think that's a point where they're missing something important, and that is, yeah, sure, it would be nice to have other heroes in the game, but not everyone has to be a first hero. And that's true. Not every first hero has to be a first hero. But the first hero, in my view, greatly determines the strategy and the flow of the game. If you have a Demon Hunter first, for example, you kind of have to play Bears for the most part, because Bears synergize so well with the Demon with Rejuve. If you have Bears, you also have Dryads. If you have Bears and Dryads and Demon, then you can go for, maybe it's a Keeper second, maybe it's a Naga second, maybe it's a Panda second. There's some changes here, but it doesn't change the strategy much. What most determines the actual look and play and feel of the strategy is the first hero. For that reason, I think we have to encourage as many different first hero options as possible. Some heroes just aren't made to be first heroes. Bloodmage, for example. Naga, for example. Panda, probably, for example. But many heroes can be first heroes, and there more can be done, especially for human. There is a bit of MK play also that we're seeing for humans right now. Almost only against Night Elf. Now, this also, I'm doing this presentation on an interesting day because just 5 days ago, Sok all of a sudden, he is showing up, and after 5 months of human suffering, he is all of a sudden coming out of the box, swinging, and suddenly giving hope to the humans again. But because of one good week, we shouldn't forget about the evidence that we've had over months of humans really doing poorly, and other first heroes doing poorly. So I think humans can use a lot of help there indeed. Like I said, Bloodmage, I think, never really works well as the first hero. Because he doesn't have summons, he doesn't have slow, he doesn't have big impact. He mainly is good for, if you have a strong first hero already, then you use Siphon to give him mana, then he's really good. So making Bloodmage work as a first hero very tough. But Pally, certainly possible with Pally rifles. MK, certainly possible with the right support. Fast expansion, in my opinion, although human is pretty good with this strategy, hasn't looked the best, hasn't looked good enough recently. Against Night Elves, it mainly was failing. Against Undead, it mainly was failing. Against Orc, it was never even tried. And before that, also, it was failing. Now, again, this comes at a weird time. This last week, the last 5-6 days, Sok all of a sudden is changing the narrative a bit. But again, I say, let's not forget about those months before, right? It might just be a flash in the pan. And yeah, obviously, humans have been suffering in all matchups in these months that I mentioned. Archmage first, Water Elemental nerf should be reverted, in my opinion. Why the humans were hit so hard on the recent patch was Water Elemental nerf plus Rifle nerf, and all of a sudden everything was terrible for them. And was the Militia nerf as well? No, there was the patch before. Militia nerf on Armor. That also seemed to be becoming more and more felt. People have been debating, should we revert the Rifle nerf? Should we revert the Water Elemental nerf? I think we should revert the Water Elemental nerf. So, Water Elementals look really good for a while, and kind of OP, because Human can creep so fast to level 3 with AM and Militia, faster than anybody else, and then you have Water Elementals at such a fast timing, faster than anybody else, is level 3 normally, and then they looked super good before we had the Heavy Armor buff. After the Heavy Armor buff, to help footies and grunts and ghouls especially, Water Elementals were no longer too strong, in my opinion, pretty clearly. I think it was an overnerf, very unnecessary overnerf that should be reverted, in my opinion. Now, what about the rifles? Shouldn't they be buffed? What about them? Aren't they too weak? I don't think so. Riflemen still have more DPS than Fiends. They are a little bit cheaper than Fiends. And they are way more microable than Fiends. If you guys don't play Warcraft 3 yourself, you might not know this, but in Warcraft 3, it's not just about attack speed, it's also about attack windup. If you move and then try to shoot something, there's this windup that needs to happen first for you to fire the projectile. Fiends very low, a very high attack windup, it takes a long time. Rifles very fast, you can stutter step really well with them. Similar to Marines, perhaps, that you may know from StarCraft 2, that makes them very, very microable. So they have huge cost efficiency for DPS output, and they're very microable. I don't think rifles should be buffed. I think they're good in the spot that they are right now. I think it was a problem in the past where Human Tier 2 could reliably beat Night Elf Tier 3. Human Tier 2 with expansion on 80 supply would beat Night Elf Tier 3 with expansion on 80 supply. And this would be rifle armies beating bear armies. That should not really happen. This should be the Night Elf having the edge, having the better counter units with a higher tech. I don't think the Human army there should be meant to win. The power of the rifles, the overstatedness of the rifles made that possible, in my opinion. Now, if Human goes Tier 3, involves more tech than just Tier 2 and rifles, then there should be absolutely a way to win. But just beating Tier 3 Night Elf army with Tier 2 Human army, with even supply, even upgrades and such, I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good design. So I think rifles are in a good spot, and Watch Elements are not. Speaking of rifles, speaking of pally rifles, the way that Blizzard tried to nerf pally rifles was by Giga nerfing the Bloodmage. I think that was a huge mistake. Bloodmage got gutted. His first of all, Banish was nerfed, but I think that was a minor part. Cooldown was increased on Banish. But the Siphon mana was absolutely gutted. The cooldown was increased. The range was decreased. The mana cost was increased. And that was, along with Banish, so many nerfs for the Bloodmage. And it was kind of a sad nerf as well. It was effective in nerfing pally rifles, but the Bloodmage was only playable in pally rifles, nowhere else. Then we nerfed the Bloodmage. He's certainly not playable anywhere else. All of a sudden, pally rifles is too weak, and now Bloodmage is just an unplayable hero. And I find that so sad. I think Bloodmage is one of the most interesting heroes ever made. He's got mana drain, which can be annoying, but there's a very good counterplay option to it. You can interrupt him. You can play out of range. You can be forward-looking in your positioning. Lots of counterplay, unlike against mana burn, against which there's very little counterplay. Secondly, also, the Siphon mana cost increase, this one here, I think this was the single biggest mistake. This means that Siphon mana is now very expensive with 25 mana. This means that you almost never can play Bloodmage now without Archmage. Bloodmage uses Siphon mana on an ally to give him mana. Then he very often runs out of mana entirely, 0. Then he wants to get a little bit of mana back to use the next Siphon. But if it's 25 mana and you don't have Brilliance Aura, it takes forever to get that 25 mana again in the time when you really need it. This has to be 10 mana on the Siphon. And yeah, let's just go through these changes here as well. Flame Strike. Sometimes we saw it in pally rifles. Against Berserkers can be pretty nice, but nowhere else really ever. It's not a good spell. This is a minor buff, a tiny buff that I'm suggesting here to the damage. This is less than 10% on level 1, less than 5% on level 2 and 3. This is kind of a psychological change to give players more of an excuse to play Bloodmage and Flame Strike. Also, channel time should go down. This is when the Bloodmage casts the Flame Strike before it starts, where it can be interrupted. I mentioned this a couple of times. It's very interesting, actually, that there's only one hero in the game whose basic ability can be cancelled in such a way in which there is 0 effect and you lose all the mana. If you use Flame Strike, and in that 0.8 second channel time, you get interrupted by Hex, Ensnare, Stomp, Stormbolt, Impale, whatever. The Flame Strike doesn't come. There's 0 damage done for you for that expenditure of mana. And all the mana's gone. Now, where does that design come from? We don't have that anywhere else. Impale still lands, even if you get interrupted, if you spend the mana. Clap still lands, Storm still lands, Nova still does the damage. Of course, Blizzard can be interrupted, obviously, but that makes sense. It's a channeling ability. Channeling for a long time with lots of damage potential. This kind of feels like Blizzard thought Flamestrike was the strongest ability in the game. Which it is not by a mile. The other things I mentioned are way better. Clap, Stomp, Nova. Those are the best abilities in the game. What we learned over the years is, yeah, damage is great, but what's really great is damage plus CC. Crowd control. Flamestrike has no crowd control. You can always move out of it. This is also, I think, a victim of the times where Flamestrike was made. When this was designed in 2003, Reign of Chaos, or the years before, people were bad. Internet connection was bad. Ping was high. Reactions were slow. Nobody could micro out of a Flamestrike well. Nowadays, everyone knows how to micro. Everyone has good micro for the most part. And people know how to move. People know what to expect. I think Flamestrike was way overvalued by Blizzard back in the day. And it would be very interesting to give Blizzard finally a time to shine. I'm misspeaking with Blizzard here. Flamestrike, of course, I'm talking about Flamestrike. It would be interesting to give Flamestrike a time to shine because we never really saw it. Although the Bloodmage is such a cool and interesting hero, so complex in its design, it never really had the chance to shine unless you're Angry Career Man. JK, that's, legend in the game. But of course, not really relevant on the pro level, which is what we're focusing on here. So Flamestrike, in my opinion, could definitely use a buff. Banish is okay the way it is. Banish is also the more boring ability. It was nerfed, but I think it's a fine nerf. However, Siphon Mana, this is the one that really makes the Bloodmage the Bloodmage. He needs to be able to use Siphon Mana well, and here I think we should give this the... first of all, mana cost reduction. Like I said, he was over-nerfed to try to deal with the Rifleman. With the mana cost reduction, he's especially more playable without AM Brilliance Aura, right? Like I explained. And also, I think we should give this the Immolation treatment. Improve the tick rate from 1.0 to 0.5. This would make this ability way more responsive. You could way better time your Siphon Mana and would feel way better, way more up to date. If anything ticks every 1 second only, every 100 milliseconds, it just feels too outdated. It feels archaic. What the hell ticks if it has a consistent damage profile or a drain profile? What ticks only every 100 milliseconds? It feels outdated. And we saw the huge change and the huge strategic revolution that came with Immolation tick rate improvement. If you improve the tick rate from 1 second to 0.5 seconds, it is so much better. It feels so much better. I'm going to make the same suggestion later with the Dark Ranger, by the way, as well, which would also make her feel a lot better. Then we would need to give it a tiny buff on the drain per second because 0.5 is, or 15 damage mana per second is not divisible by 2. So it has to be divisible by 2. So tiny buff on level 1 mana drain, tiny buff on level 2 mana drain, just to make it divisible by 2. 18 and 13 in those cases. That will finally make the Bloodmage playable again and give him a role again in the meta, where at the moment he's missing. Bloodmage is basically nowhere to be seen and just bad. All right, next hero, Paladin. Paladin had 1 or 2 years of a lot of excitement and popularity with the Pally Rifle strategy. Got nerfed and nerfed and nerfed and nerfed and weaker again. With this Bloodmage change, by the way, I also think Pally Rifles are going to be better again because Bloodmage is a very important part of Pally Rifles. And I think that's the better way to buff it, not just to buff the rifles, like I explained before, because they are very well statted already. But yeah, Divine Shield. I think Divine Shield is weird. Anything that is invulnerable for a very, very long time, or God forbid, permanently invulnerable, I think is stupid. Now, Divine Shield goes up in duration, the way it is right now, 15, 25, 35 seconds. But to make up for it, so that there's not too much or too little of a window where it's vulnerable, the cooldown goes up immensely. I always thought that was a dumb design. I think we should just decrease the duration, just make it 10 seconds flat on every level, and also then make the cooldown lower on every level. Maybe this could even be a 30-second cooldown. Maybe it shouldn't be even 35, but 30 seconds. Debatable. And I think it should give HP regen to the Pally as well. Now, why do I think it? First of all, it would be a great quality of life improvement. Every noob player knows this. This is especially cool for the noobs. Pally is really low. You're panicking. You're hitting the button, and then you're invulnerable for 15 seconds or 25, whatever it is. But the invul is over, and then you're still hurt. And then you might still die. And that kind of sucks. If you give him health regen here, like I propose, you hit the invul button. It's shorter now. It doesn't go as insanely long on high level anymore, but it heals up the Pally a lot. 250 on level 1, 500 on level 2, 750 on level 3. This gives the Pally maybe first hero potential. Maybe. I'm not saying that it will, because you have to give up something very meaningful for it. But for first heroes, and in general in the early game, healing is so important. Healing is such a rare resource in the early game. And the reason why we see the same heroes all the time, guys, in case you guys didn't know, a big reason is healing. Blademaster and Demon Hunter, they can't heal innately, but they have very high armor, which means they shrug off lots of damage, they heal efficiently, and they have very high stats, damage, to trade well, to need to heal less than the opponent than they're damaging. Healing efficiency is so important for first heroes. Death Knight, he's fast, decent stats, and inbuilt healing, and healing for others. And then, what else do we have as good first heroes? Summoner heroes. Summoner heroes, they kind of bypass this healing issue because they don't need to heal, because they have summons to tank for them, and then they don't need healing. They can reserve the little healing that there is for emergencies. If we give other heroes more innate, inbuilt healing, that enables them way more, especially as first heroes, and maybe also in other scenarios. Now, this is, of course, a big buff to Divine Shield. I'm not sure that this is enough to really make something like Holy Light plus Divine Shield a viable Pally first build, because you have to give up something big, and that is the Devotion Aura. Devotion Aura is really, really strong. Could you ever go something like Divine Shield plus Devotion Aura build? I mean, it might depend on the stats. If we crank up these healing numbers even more, maybe yes. But then there's an interesting tension of what do you want to skill? Because right now, basically nobody's skilling Divine Shield. There's not much reason. Especially if you position well. I guess nowadays on pro level is always Holy Light and Devotion every time. I think this would be interesting to give the Pally, first of all, that nice little comfy blanket of giving him some healing when he really needs it. And yeah, maybe also some other first hero and build possibilities. First of all, Knights. Knights once upon a time had Sundering Blades by default, and it used to be 15% bonus damage to medium armor. That was too much. That was really, really, really strong. It was born out of a need to deal with undead and with fiends. And that was too much. And then Sundering Blades was reduced to 10% bonus damage innately. And I think that was perfect. And then Blizzard, at a time when human wasn't doing really well against undead, then they made Sundering Blades an upgrade, a researchable upgrade. Still only 10% damage bonus. I think it was perfect when it was 10% damage bonus against medium, like it is now, but give it to the Knights innately. And also, give Annual War Training to Knights, or in general, to be researchable on Tier 2. This would be a huge buff against Undead right now, where Human needs it. It seems like Human right now is struggling a lot against Undead. Again, the last 5 days with Sok were looking a bit different, but we want to consider the big month span as well, that certainly looked that way. Would help a lot against fiend play from undeads where they are needed. And also, one of my biggest gripes, it would be a huge help to possibly encourage more Tier 3 Knight play in Human Mirror to finally get rid of Breaker Mirror. Because Breaker Mirror is maybe the most boring thing we've ever had in Warcraft 3. And beyond that, we can keep going. Knights right now are not too strong anywhere, so it's really safe to give them buffs. That's the cool thing here. Knights against Night Elf, we not never see them, but we almost never see them. In very long games, 2-base, Tier 3, we sometimes see them, but Knights normally take a ton of damage from Dryad, so they never really seem that good. They can benefit from Inner Fire, but they're not really a big factor. Against Orcs, we never, ever, ever see Knights. If we buff Knights this way, maybe there's more potential to play them in the matchups where they are never or almost never played. And the matchup where they are needed, we give them the role that is necessary, I think, for a healthier meta. Like I said, to make matchup against Undead more fair, and against Night Elf, also where they could help. Secondly, now this is my first This is my first really daring change here, I would say, with the Sorcs. So, Sorcs Tier 3 Master Training never really does anything because it's too much mana. You don't have that much mana to waste. A valuable lesson to be learned over the years was we have lots of dispel in the game. Whenever a spell from a caster, be it a buff or a debuff or whatever, whenever that spell costs a lot of mana and it's easy to dispel, it's a bad spell. That shit is not worth using. That's why Invis is good, it's cheap in mana. Inner Fire is good, it's cheap in mana. Slow is good, it's cheap in mana. Dispel is kind of cheap in mana and sometimes very necessary. Heal is good, it's cheap in mana. You see the trend here? Whatever's cheap in mana and spammable is worth using if it doesn't matter so much if it gets dispelled, right? Polymorph, 200 mana. That's too much. I suggest giving it a huge mana cost decrease to 50 to finally make it worth using so that if it gets dispelled, it's not the end of the world. Now, of course, if Polymorph is so much cheaper, then it also has to be a lot less impactful. And I was thinking about these numbers a lot, but I will admit I'm not 100% sure that these numbers are perfect this way. This means duration on units would be only 8 seconds, so even if it doesn't get dispelled, you return to normal pretty fast. Duration on heroes would be only 2 seconds. It used to be 1.5 before. Blizzard first suggested 3. We all said, oh, that's way too much. And then it was 2. And then we noticed, wait a minute, Sorcs never have mana to use that anyways. So I am feeling pretty confident that this is the right approach. Maybe you could say it's too little mana. If it was up to 75 mana, I could also say, okay. But 200 mana is way, way too much. We need a more usable spell. And something that I'm also going to be introducing here as an idea is 30% healing reduction. Now, this is not a new idea. Many of you will remember the Orb of Fire. Orb of Fire used to be the human orb that used to reduce healing on the target by 30%. That was a great idea. That was a great idea. However, on an orb, kind of weird because it's sometimes useful and sometimes really not useful. I think we should have healing reduction in the game as another layer in terms of strategic depth that you can apply, especially to certain armies. If the enemy army is healing really well, really efficiently, then maybe you want to make some units to counter that, like Sorcs with Polymorph. It's a difficult tech tree to get to, but maybe if you really need it, also I'm going to have some more ideas for that later, as you will see. In my opinion, in general, healing is insanely good in Warcraft 3. Every amazing late-game army, you will notice, works with lots of healing. Bear army, rejuvenation. Undead army, coil, unholy aura, blight, statues. And of course, ritual dagger in the early game. Healing is premium. Healing is premium, ultra premium in Warcraft 3. In all stages of the game. Healing reduction, I think, should be part of the game. Also, orc armies, of course. Shadowhunter healing, right? Heal wards, in theory, if you ever have the time. Human armies with priest healing and scrolls of regen. Healing is so important to this game. I think we should have a counter in place to that. And the goddamn door is ringing. Don't have time. Militia coming up next. Okay, if it rings again, maybe I have to get the door. God damn it. These goddamn neighbors. Militia duration coming up next. As I pointed out in my goals earlier, I think expansions are good. I think strong defenses are good. I think being stable on 2 bases is good. I think Militia is a key part of that. I think we can also, 2 patches ago or something, we had armor being reduced by Militia. I didn't really like that. So I think we can buff that duration even more, in my opinion. Human oftentimes is the race that sets the momentum with when to expand, and then the other races can respond. And I think the good thing is, if human can expand, everyone can expand as well on the other side. Nihilists can counter-expand, Undeads can counter-expand, Orc can counter-expand. But human needs to feel safe to play that expansion. And the second point is, this would be a huge quality of life improvement, call to arms range. Now, this might not be very clear what I mean by this, so I'm going to show it. He runs to the town hall, but the range is really short. He has to get really close to the town hall into attacking range. I think if this was just a little bit longer, if it was just like 40 range longer, so that you can maybe get call to arms like here. This makes it way more microable. oftentimes you call peasants and they're running to the town hall, right? And then there's a couple of peasants here, maybe a few footies, and they block each other and they walk around weird and it feels dumb. You have to wait, blah, blah, blah. Next up, Breakers. One of the spell immune units in the game. I think it's always stupid when mass spell immune units is a viable strategy. I mean, every game designer must agree with this. Spell immune units are obviously very powerful in certain scenarios because they are spell immune. So they should never have amazing stats, right? Because then why would you ever make anything else? They should have weak stats. And the stats should be weak enough that they should never have the ability to be masked, only them, and then it's a viable army. That's just dumb. And of course, exactly what's happening in Breaker Mirror. However, I don't think we can really nerf the armor or the stats or the damage for Breakers because they seem very well balanced everywhere else, especially against Night Elf and against Orc. Against Undead, they're not really a thing, unless there's Banshees. So they seem to be very well balanced, but in Human Mirror, it is so annoying to have Breaker Mirror this long. Now, this idea came from Sini, the Chinese pro Warcraft player, and I think it was a really cool idea. Just increase collision size on the Breakers. That means that you can't stack them up like we see so much in Human Mirror. Sometimes there's 10, 15, sometimes even 20 Breakers in a Human Mirror. If they have bigger collision size, if they're blocking each other more, they can't target things so well anymore, they're more clunky to move, then there's less reason to mass them in huge numbers. Very smart change, I think, that Sini suggested, because they still work well then as a frontline against Breakers, as a frontline against Orcs, because against those races, you can never make like 10 plus Breakers. You need other units as well. Just in Human Mirror, it's only Breakers and a couple of Priests. And that is dreadful. That is such bad meta. And this change would be trying to address that. Will it solve the issue? I don't know, but it's an interesting step. Next up, the Priest. This would just be a tiny change, mainly a feel-good change to improve the AI. With Priests, especially against Disease Club, but also against other things, it can be annoying. There's like a unit in the back that is missing 10 HP, and the Priest wastes a heal there, when rather you should be healing the low HP units in front. So I think it would be cool if the AI automatically made it so that the auto heal only works on units that are missing 25 hit points. And also a little heal range increase, because it seems like the Priests are oftentimes out of range. Or, not out of range, but too close to the front line to try to heal. If people say that this would be too big of a buff for Priests, then maybe I can believe them. It's only heal range, though. It's not like it's more healing. It's not like it's more damage, so I have a tough time believing it. Maybe they might be right with that. All right, next one. This is the last slide for the humans. As I've said now many times, I think fast expo meta is really good. I think expansions are really interesting. I think all expos should be made a little bit easier. A little bit cheaper with 15 gold. A little bit less lumber as well with 10 less lumber. More incentive to go for expansion. Pretty straightforward. Now, I think we shouldn't tweak the numbers here too heavily, especially for human, because human with a power build will be double dipping into these resources. If we go even lower with the resource, and then there's the power build, then there's even more resources being saved. So here I'm being rather conservative with the resource decrease. And Orb of Slow. I think all orbs should be 300 gold flat. I think that's nicely symmetrical. If every single orb is only 300, it is again more reason to go tier 3, more reason to go triple hero, more reason to explore more of the tech tree to have more diversity. Orb of Slow is kind of good already in the right army, but only with the right army. And to have the Orb of Slow be good, you have to have the chasing army. If you're chasing an opponent and you're slowing down units, and that makes it easier for you to get those kills, like against Fiend armies, for example, really good. If you're playing against Night Elf, and the bears are chasing you, and you're running away, you're the way kiting, this orb does basically nothing. And for that reason, also humans never get it against Night Elf. I think it would be cool if the orb had an additional effect of doing 30 extra damage to spell immune units. Now, as you can tell, this is also born out of my disgust for Human Mirror. This would be a huge buff, or a huge tool against Breaker Mirror. The Night change would be a huge tool against Breaker Mirror. And also the Breaker change itself would be trying to tackle the Breaker Mirror issue. Of course, it would also work against Destroyers and against Dryads, not against Orc. So it is not super elegant, this suggestion, but it will help a lot against certain issues. And yeah, against Undead also it helps a little bit. It's difficult to get to Dryads though, but this is mainly to battle the scourge that is the human Breaker Mirror. Alright, that's it with humans. Next up, we got orcs. And orc is looking decent in the patch. We've been seeing some more strategies as well on the new patch. We saw some Witch Doctors, for example, but only very little. There is two big overarching issues with orc. The first one is first heroes. There's only two viable first heroes for orc, either the Farseer or the Blademaster. You can't play TC first on the top level. You can't play Shadowhunter first on the top level. And that's a shame. We've seen in other races, in other metas, that having more hero diversity can be very exciting for different playstyles. Undead did it very well. For Undead, every first hero is playable. That's a dream. Night Elf, if all the heroes were in the right spot, they could also all be playable as a first hero. It doesn't have to be the case that every hero for orc has to be a playable first hero. That would be asking for too much. But we need more than just one hero to be a first hero strong in the late game. That is not good design. Right now, of course, it's only the Blademaster. Blademaster is playable as a first hero, kind of weak early game, but can be insane in the late game. Farseer is the complete opposite. He is strong in the early game, and then very weak in the late game. We need to find a middle ground here. I'm going to suggest elevating the Farseer, or rather elevating him and giving him a different toolkit possibility, and also possibly enabling the other two heroes, as you'll see in a moment. That's the first issue. Secondly, Orc seems to be the only race that cannot tier 1 expand. Everyone else certainly can. We've seen it from humans and undeads and night elves. And I'm not sure if this is absolutely fixable, but we can try. Now, the issue with tier 1 expanding is you need to have a good early game, right? And you need to have a hero that soaks up lots of experience to then be worth the investment in the late game. So, if you play Lich first and mass ghouls, you're going to be stuck on one hero for a long time, and you're going to be soaking up lots of experience with that hero. And you need to be able to fast expand with that hero. Now, Blademaster, as I said, is kind of weak in the early game. Can you fast expand on tier 1 with a Blademaster? Probably not. Probably never. But you probably could fast expand with a Farseer. With a Farseer, with Wolf's Chain Lightning, if you have a good creep route, if you have a good build, you can probably fast expand with him. But fast expanding means late tier 2, late second hero, late tier 2 units, and the Farseer soaks up a lot of experience. And that's the big issue with the Farseer. He is not going to be carrying the weight properly in the late game as a Demon Hunter would, or a Keeper. Okay, no. Let's forget about the Keeper for now. But the DK would, and the MK would, and the Archmage would, these are heroes that will be delivering in the late game if they soak up so much experience as a first hero, fast expo kind of playstyle. Orc normally, yeah, as I said, can't tier 1 expand too well, also because they seem to need tier 2 so much. They seem to need the second hero and the tier 2 additions so much. Nobody else seems to reliant, especially on a second hero, as much as orcs are. And as far as balance goes, orcs have been looking too weak lately against undeads and a bit too strong against humans. That's mainly because humans have just been looking weak in general. And against undead specifically, it is the issue of Ghoul Destroyer, which seems to be destroying every strategic option for Orc outside of Wyvern. And little spoilers ahead, by the way, there are some Ghoul Destroyers nerfs coming later. First though, Orc heroes. Blademaster here in the top left. Blademaster's in a pretty good spot. He's a good hero. He's not too strong early game, but he can be very strong late game, as we all know. It's a really fun, exciting hero. I think it's always a shame that when the Blade reaches level 6, he never seems to have the mana necessary for Bladestorm. And Bladestorm isn't even a really good ultimate. Bladestorm was buffed significantly in damage. I think it used to be 110 damage per second, and it was buffed to 140 damage per second, and it still wasn't a very good ultimate. So I feel like the mana cost could be brought down significantly here. The second point is, while the Blade can be really strong in the late game, but struggles in the early game, I think sometimes it gets too insane in the ultra late game. If a Blademaster crits for 300, 350, 400, that is insane. That is way too much power in one hero, in my opinion. Now, this is very, very rare in 1v1. Extremely rare. But you know where we see it a lot? In FFA, in timer tournaments, mirror image, Blademaster, Master Orc casters unbelievable, almost look unbeatable in that game mode. This nerf is mainly targeted at FFA and like timer game modes, because there I think the blade is just way too crazy, way too insane. I'm willing to go back on that though. If people are saying, oh, don't touch our Blademaster, we never get to this stage, I'll be saying, okay, all right, fine. But I think this would make sense. I think this would bring his insane, sometimes unfair feeling limit cap down a little bit. I used to be against damage caps a lot when I wasn't very experienced yet in Warcraft 3. When, looking at the Wikipedia and at the different spells, Shockwave has a damage cap, Carrion Swarm has a damage cap, Blizzard, I think, has a damage cap. Many abilities do, also Breath of Fire. And it seemed kind of lame, it seemed kind of weird, it seemed kind of strange. But over the years, if you watch lots of games and you consider balance, you will also realize that shit is necessary. If Carrion Swarm level 3, or Shockwave level 3, or Breath of Fire, before it was nerfed, didn't have a damage cap, that would be crazy. You could be doing like 3,000 damage with one spell. That's crazy. And I think the Blademaster is kind of similar here. If the blade crits for 300 plus, requiring no mana, it is just insane value. Too much value, I think, in that hero. If people heavily disagree with this, then I will be conceding this point and saying, okay, fine, I guess not. But I think this would be largely healthy for the game. All right, next up, Shadowhunter. Serpent Wards level 1, I suggest a big damage boost. This is especially to make Shadowhunter playable as a first hero. Serpent Wards level 1 basically never matter if the Shadowhunter is a second hero. Serpent Wards are only ever played against a Night Elf, against Dryads and Hunts. In the Keeper Day, of course, we used to see it a whole lot. But where we never see him is basically anywhere else. Serpent Wards also suffered from the heavy armor buff, where piercing damage has less damage against them, against heavy armor. And I think one thing that we overlooked, certainly I overlooked, was the consideration of summons in the heavy armor heavy armor buff, right? So before heavy armor was buffed, it was all piercing damage all the time. We used to call it the piercing damage meta. And I think that was appropriate. It was appropriate to name it that. It was Farseer Headhunters all the time. It was Fiends all the time. It was Rifles all the time. It was not really Archers all the time, but lots of Dryads. Archers are just simply not really good enough. But so much piercing damage. So we said, okay, too much piercing damage. The heavy armor with normal attack type is supposed to counter the piercing damage, but doesn't work. So how about we buff heavy armor? I think that was a great change. I still think that was a great change for the game. And that brought down the piercing damage strats like Fiends, like Rifles quite a bit. But I think what he didn't consider was it also means a considerable nerf to piercing damage summons. And they never really were a problem. Water Elementals maybe for a short while were considered too strong, like I mentioned earlier, before the heavy armor buff. But since the heavy armor buff, certainly not. This is why the Water Elemental change was an over nerf and unneeded. But things like Serpent Wards weren't really too crazy, except against Hunts maybe sometimes. Quill Beasts were never a problem. Whatever other piercing damage summons do we have? Do we have any others? The Necro Skelly dudes, the Skeletal Mages maybe? But yeah, the piercing damage summons really suffered from the heavy armor buff. And I think Serpent Wards level 1 deserves a big buff. Serpent Wards level 2 does enough damage, but Serpent Wards level 1 really doesn't. It seems like it almost does nothing. Also, when you're fighting against an enemy army, those die so quick. They can be sniped super fast. This is mainly a buff intended to be for Shadowhunter first. Shadowhunter first, Serpent Wards first, creeping. Creep speed is another really important factor in first hero choices. And if the Shadowhunter had stronger level 1 Serpent Wards, maybe that could give him an option to be played as a first hero. Many years ago, Lynn played a couple of games of Shadowhunter first into like Blade second and TC third or something. Would be kind of cool if it works out. Does it work out that way? Does that make Shadowhunter first playable? I don't know. Does it make Shadowhunter second too strong with level 1 Serpent Wards? I really don't think so. I really don't. Another strat that gets empowered with this, by the way, is Shadowhunter Pitlord. That's something we saw for a short while. That also faded into obscurity and is sadly no longer playable anywhere, it seems. Creep speed would be helped a lot with this. Shadowhunter First could be helped a lot with this. I want to bring something else up. Yeah. Like, Shadowhunter normally, it seems like he has the right tools to be a good first hero. He's got a strong early game disable before there's easy dispel against it with Hex. And he has summons to do good damage to help you with creeping. It's a little bit similar to the Keeper. Keeper has the Treants to help you with creeping. Keeper has Entangle to lock down units. Keeper, if he's well statted, is a good hero. Just right now he isn't because the stats are terrible and the Keeper is bad. But it seems like Shadowhunter on paper should be a viable first hero. Also, he's got good move speed. That's another factor. He just has very weak right click, which I think is the way it's supposed to be. He has summons, he has Hex, he has Heal Wave. All can be great abilities with the right tuning. Having him also do big right click damage, I don't think would be right. But yeah, I think Shaman boards here would be very interesting for him. Now, I feel like I spent too much time talking about the Shadowhunter. Next up, Farseer. So, remember how I said the big problem is we only have 2 viable first heroes as for the Orc, and only one is good in the late game. That's because Farseer is bad in the late game. Wolves normally never do anything in the late game because in almost every 1v1 army, there is always a good amount of Dispel. Chain Lightning has decent damage, but no crowd control, a little bit heavy on the mana. And of course, Farsight is useless, absolutely useless. So my suggestion is make Wolves a little bit cheaper in mana. They were perhaps too cheap once upon a time when it was 75 mana. Then Blizzard increased it to 85 mana. I think that was overshooting it a little bit. I think the middle ground of 80 would be sweet for the Pharaoh Spirit Wolves. And Chain Lightning, I think it's just too little damage. Especially level 2 Chain Lightning, it only goes from 85 to 125. It seems like a tiny jump. But speaking of jumps also, it jumps more to more targets, so that's also where the damage is increased. But I feel like the Farseer should just be more of a scary hero in the late game. You have big armies, maybe you have expansions, you have 70, 80 supply. The Farseer never seems to do anything, and that seems sad to me. However, the most exciting change that I thought of is Farsight. And I think this is my coolest change that I'm suggesting here so far. And that is to give Farsight a new ability. So, Farsight is only Vision at the moment, absolutely useless. But I think it would be cool if we gave it a mana component. Now, I suggest when you use Farsight, it's a 30-second cooldown. It gives you 60 mana on level 1, 120 mana on level 2, 180 mana on level 3. But also, how about you can target Farsight on an ally unit or ally hero, and then it gives them 60, 120, 180 mana. I think this is a really neat idea. Gives the Farseer a new option. I was thinking about the numbers as well. First of all, this is a nice round number. 60 mana, 30-second cooldown. That's 2 mana per second. This is a little bit more mana than Dark Ritual, but of course Dark Ritual can also deny units, and it can eat bigger units for more mana. And it gives the mana to a stronger late-game hero, the Lich, who is insane, with Orb and Nova. So I feel like this is kind of a safe number. And the best thing about this is, guys, this might give the Farseer a new role. The interesting thing about these Orc heroes here is, they can all be played kind of in a different role. Blademaster is almost always played as a first hero, but rarely he's also played as a third hero. If it's a long game with expansions, big map, lots of items, Blademaster can be played as a third hero. In fact, we saw that earlier in the Sock vs. Lin series that I showed. Shadowhunter and TC can both be interchanged as second and third hero, not really as first hero, unless these changes that I suggest, they might help them in that direction. But the Farseer, right? Why is the Farseer only playable as a first hero? It's because you have to skill Wolves. Farsight is just completely useless. Absolutely useless, so there's no choice. You have to go Chain Lightning and Wolves. That is not the case for basically any other summoner hero. Cryptlord, for example, you can play him as a first hero with summons, with the Beetles, or you play him as a third hero with Impale and Passive. There's options there with the Cryptlord. With the Keeper, you can go Aura and Entangle if you don't want to go summons. Who else is there? Beastmaster, not really. He only has summons. Firelord as well. Firelord, you can go Lava Spawn if you want, but if you don't want them, don't want that, you can go for Incinerate and you can go for Soulburn. So different options. This finally gives the Farseer a different option other than have to go for other than having to go for summons. Maybe you could go something like Shadowhunter first into Farseer second to have that mana support plus Chain Lightning. Or maybe a TC into Farseer. Not sure if that's going to be good enough. Not sure if that's going to work. But there's options here. And speaking of TC, I suggest as well increasing base armor from 2 to 3 and base strength from 25 to 26. TC... Oh, wait. What's the stats on him again? Wait, I have to look it up. TC stats are surprisingly very low. For example, did you know Dreadlord always considered a very weak hero, right? Kind of squishy, doesn't seem to do much. If we count his stats together here, he's got 20 plus 16 plus 18. That is 54 stats. TC, 25, 10, 50, 15. That's only 50. He's got 4 stats less than the Dreadlord. And there's some stat monsters in here. Of course, the Blade and the Demon are stat monsters, obviously. They always are. But the Pit Lord, on the other side, he's got 58. He's got 8 more stats than the TC. Now, I understand that the TC shouldn't have the highest stats of all time because he scales well into the late game. He's got aura. He's got, like, the literal aura. Not what the kids say with aura. You know what I mean. He's got the endurance aura. He's got AoE abilities. These can be quite good for the late game. But I think he's just a bit understated. Give him 1 more strength. Give him 1 more armor. I think that would help the TC. And it's most important for first heroes. These little stat bonuses, 1 strength here, 1 armor there. This is most important for a first hero because in the early game, you have very few units. You're working with very little. The impact there that a little bit of attributes can have is way bigger. If we're looking at a TC third or a TC second, there, just a little bit of stat boost isn't going to have that big of an impact. I don't think this would be a balance problem, so to speak, in the meta that we're looking at right now. It also helps with the TC's most common problem. If you don't find a Ring of Protection on the TC, he just always seems very squishy and kind of useless. And with that, just 1 more armor would help him a little bit in that direction. All right, moving on. I think this is taking way longer than I first thought it would. Okay, Burning Oil. Don't have to talk much about this. This is very obvious. Burning Oil is really bad. It is absolute garbage, useless, and it should be heavily buffed. And to give you a little example, so here we got Burning Oil. And Burning Oil, visually, it lasts for 4 seconds. It's 4 or 5 seconds where you see the Burning Oil, but it only does damage for 2.5 seconds. Why is that? The visual effect is way longer than the actual damage effect. The damage effect is really low already. We need more damage. We need more duration. Make it fit the visuals. I know that Blizzard cares about those visual things because the Panda was giga nerfed because they didn't like that the visual of the Breath of Fire didn't fit the actual damage range of the Breath of Fire. So Blizzard, if you care about that, how about you care about this as well? Not a nerf where it's not needed, but a buff where it is needed. That would be nice. Next up, Taurens. I think they're too expensive in lumber. We've seen many times orcs trying to go tier 3, trying to play interesting styles, trying to play Pulverize and Taurens and whatever, and they just don't have enough lumber. So I think this could be decreased quite a bit on lumber. I will say it's a lot of lumber decrease. If people disagree with this number and they're saying, hey, this is too strong, then maybe I could see that argument. Maybe this is a bit too much. But right now it just seems like it's too hard for Orc to get to tier 3. We only really see Taurens in Orc Mirror. Nowhere else, really. Unless it's a crazy long game. 2 base against Undead or Human lately. Or against Undead or Human maybe. But that almost never happens. Okay, next up, Witch Doctor. Now, this is one of my more daring suggestions. And I imagine some people might think this is too good. I think this is fine. I will also admit, though, I'm not sure this might not be too strong. Let's get into it. So, Sentry Ward ability. This one is stupid, in my opinion. It just places a ward on the map, it's 50 mana, and then it looks at stuff. It's kind of like the POTM Owl. Also very useless, also very stupid, also not fun, also not interactive. And it lasts 10 minutes. It lasts 10 minutes. It's absolutely wild. Yeah, yeah, Witch Doctors are almost never playable unless the game is super slow. We've seen a little tiny bit of mass Witch Doctor play lately in Orc Mirror, which was kind of exciting against Taurens with heal wards, but that didn't really seem strong enough either. So, one thing to consider here is to have a good caster. This is a general rule to consider if you're Blizzard game developers, if you will. To have a caster be decently playable in the meta, that caster unit needs to be doing at least something decent on initiate training. Ideally, you want that caster to be doing something really good on initiate training. Let me give you an example. Priests with heal, really good. Sorcs with slow, really good. Walkers with Spirit Link and high damage, really good. Shaman with purge, really good. And also Banshees with curse, really good. All these units are really good with initiate training already, and they get better with more upgrades. That is how you make these units playable the best. Doesn't have to be that way necessarily. There can be exceptions to this case as well. But if you look at other examples, like Talons, for example, Talon, Fairy Fire is okay, but it's not really good enough, and we don't really see play from them. But that's probably more because of other issues I'm getting into later. So, the Witch Doctor is not really playable right now because he's just too useless for too long. And the terrible thing about the Witch Doctor is, he doesn't get good with Adept training. He only gets good with Master training. And I think that's a big balance issue. That's a design issue, actually. Not a balance issue, that's more a design issue. You cannot have a caster unit take until Master training to do something for you. So, for that reason, I think Heal Wards should be tier 2. Now, this is the point where some people might say, hey, this is too strong. I think it's okay, though. It's still a heavy investment to get Heal Wards. You need the supply, obviously, you need the gold cost, and that Witch Doctor doesn't provide much outside of Heal Ward. Also, on tier 2, he has way less mana than he would have with Master training. So I think Heal Wards being available on tier 2 Adept, I think would make this unit finally way more interesting. And yeah, like I suggest here, just remove Sentry Ward straight up from the Witch Doctor and kind of combine Stasis Traps and Sentry Wards into each other. That if you place a Stasis Trap, that thing also gives you vision in 1200 range and detection. And I think we should also increase HP by 25. Right now, Stasis Traps, it just takes one hit from a hero to kill. I think that's a bit too easy. I think that should be 2 hits, and then maybe there's more way to make Stasis Traps work. And if we have that on tier 1, and Heal Wards on tier 2, and Sentry Wards is gone, which I think it should be, because it's just too boring, uninteresting, then I think it should have a new master ability, Mana Totem. Finally, a mana sustain ability for orcs. 1 mana per second, 25-second duration, so 25 seconds is the same as Heal Wards. 1 mana per second is less than statues, less than level 2 Archmage Aura. And of course, it doesn't last very long. And here, we would have to figure out what the right number is. I think 25 seconds is the right number. I think 1 mana per second is the right number. The question is, how much mana should this cost? How much mana should a mana totem cost? Is 150 the right amount? That is the same as Healing Wards. Maybe it should be higher. I could see this having to be higher. Maybe it should be 200. 250 would be crazy high. Yeah, but I think this would make this Witch Doctor way more playable, way more interesting. Lastly, the Shaman. The Shaman is really good with Purge. The Shaman, in theory, if you ever get there with Bloodlust, is really good as well. But Lightning Shield is kind of bad. Lightning Shield is too expensive. 100 mana is too much, especially nowadays where everyone knows how to dispel properly, knows how to micro properly. Next up, buildings. Like I said earlier, Orc is the only race that cannot really fast expand. Orc can, however, counter expand against everyone. Can counter expand against human, counter expand against undead. Night Elves don't really fast expand because they have to go tier 3 bears, but in general they can. But if this expansion was just a little bit faster, just a little bit cheaper, then maybe also tier 1 expansion could be possible for the Orcs. I think this would be a step in the right direction. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased here. As you have now no doubt seen, I am a big fan of expansion play. Part of expansion play is also having strong defenses. For that reason, I think Spiked Barricades should research a little bit faster to have it available a little bit quicker if you need it. And I think burrow damage could also be increased. Maybe I overdid it here with +3 damage. Yeah. I was debating these numbers a lot. Maybe +2 damage is enough. But Orc bases are very frail, as we know, if they don't have reinforced defenses. I know that some people say bases should be attackable and, you know, frail in some regards. Orc bases are by far the most frail, and I think good defenses is actually good. Good defenses leads to expansion play, leads to, again, more diversity, leads to more interesting game states and armies and strategic depth, like I pointed out earlier. That's my view. Now, another thing that would help a lot with Orc Fast Expo, again, Fast Expo means late tech, means being stuck on tier 1 for a long time, means being stuck on one hero for a long time. If Troll Regen was available on tier 1, this would make Headhunters a lot more playable in the early game, and I think, for thematic reasons, would be also cool if it worked on the Shadowhunter. Now, having Troll Regen on a Shadowhunter 2nd or Shadowhunter 3rd doesn't really matter. 1 more HP regen on that hero, it's absolutely minimal impact. But having that on a Shadowhunter 1st, that would be quite a considerable improvement. I wonder if there's going to be some people panicking here, seeing this change, saying, oh my god, no! Farseer Headhunter in the early game now going to be way too strong. Don't you remember the Farseer Headhunter days? I remember those days, but lots of things have changed since then. Especially the heavy armor buff has hit since then. And I think everyone has good tools against Headhunters. So I don't think this would be hugely overpowering for Headhunters. I think it would be a nice little help for the Headhunters and also a nice little help for the Shadowhunter to possibly make Shadowhunter first, Fast Expo, a thing. And here as well, Orb of Lighting, gold cost reduced to 300. Like I said, I think this makes more tier 3 incentives are good. More options, more diversity, all that. All right, that's the last slide for the Orcs. Moving on to Undeads. Undeads have not the same issue as Orcs. Undeads are actually very, very diverse in first hero options. All heroes work as first heroes. That is actually amazing design. DK works as a first hero, Lich works as a first hero, Crypt works as a first hero, and even Dreadlord works as a first hero. The issue is tweaking. The issue is balance. Some are way stronger than others. By the way, the big reason why they work as first heroes is because of a smart design change by Blizzard. They introduced the Ritual Dagger to give independent healing. Once upon a time, only Death Knight was ever playable as a first hero because he had the best healing. Nobody else could really heal. That was really, really painful and annoying. And with the Ritual Dagger, way more options were enabled. However, at the moment, clearly, DK and Lich are very good, and the other two heroes are just way weaker. It seems like there's no reason to ever play the other two heroes because you're just left with worse heroes, right? So those heroes deserve a buff. Next point, Frenzy Ghouls and Destroyers. We've seen them for so long. They're insanely strong on the tier 3 stage. As I'm going to get into later, there are some strats and some heroes, especially Demon Hunter and Mana Burn, which are bad for the game. They limit so much what the opponent can do that it erases half of the opponent's options just by one hero or just by one ability. And I said that for a long time. I think it's really, really unhealthy what Mana Burn does to the game. But I have to admit here as well, it's not just Mana Burn that can do that. If one strategy is so strong at a certain point where it can be so deadly at a certain timing, like Ghoul Destroyers can be with Frenzy Destroyers, that's also a problem. That's also not healthy for a game. Take, for example, Night Elf versus Undead right now. It's almost always 1-base. We're creeping up in the early game, fighting. And then Undead goes for a tier 3 timing attack, most of the time. And quite often he wins with that timing. And this strat is so strong and so dangerous that Night Elf has to play a very, very specific style just to survive against this. How they win the game in the end, that's plan B. You know, that we'll cross that bridge when you get there. The most important thing, you have to be strong enough to survive that point in the game. And there's only one way to be strong enough against that. You need Demon, you need level 3, you need Naga, you need Dryad Bears. You need to have that. Anything else and you're dead. You're playing Warden, you're dead. You're playing Keeper, you're dead. You're playing POTM, you're dead. Tavern Hero, dead. And so this is a similar problem in concept to Mana Burn. This limits strategic variety a lot. If something is too strong at a certain point, it's a problem. Same for Orcs, by the way. You play Farseer first, you're dead. You're playing Headhunters first, you're dead. You're playing, I don't know, Witch Doctors, dead. You can only play Blade, Wyvern at the moment. So this is oppressive. This is oppressive for the opponent, too oppressive. Of course, it's a real-time strategy game. There should be moments of weakness, there should be moments of strength, there should be power spikes, of course. Otherwise, if everything is just even all the time, it's boring as hell. And why would you ever look for fights, avoid fights, and, you know, go for tactical maneuvers? But if it's something that's too strong, it is not good for the game. And I think that is where we are right now. Now, the second last patch, we had ghouls being nerfed on damage. This was the right and the wrong approach at the same time. It made frenzy ghouls worse, but it made ghouls overall worse. Ghouls were then not good enough in the early game, and certainly not in the mid game. In the mid game, they were a complete joke. So I think ghouls are fine the way they are. Just frenzy ghouls are too good. And I'm going to suggest a nerf in a moment. And yeah, because of Frenzy Ghoul Destroyer, Undead is looking definitely too strong right now against Human and against Orc. And maybe also a little bit too strong against Night Elf. But against Night Elf, I would rather say the problem is the oppressive nature that they put forth with their strategy. So, here are my suggestions. Let me just put the camera up here a little bit. So, Cryptlord first. Impale, I think Impale was handled really well. Impale used to be too strong, then it was nerfed in power, but then the mana cost was too great for the lower power, so the mana cost was decreased to 90. That was great. Impale now in a very fine spot. The passive is also in a very fine spot. I think the ult is too bad. It's kind of a weak ultimate. It's fine to have a weaker ultimate, but if the ult is weak, the cooldown needs to be low. So 100-second cooldown on the ult, I think, would be appropriate. Carrion Beetles, I think the mana should be reduced from 50 to 45, from 50 to 45. And the most important change, the biggest issue with the Cryptlord is he cannot impale webbed or entangled or ensnared targets. And I don't really know why that is. Blizzard made this exclusion for some reason. Maybe it's visual. I don't really know why. And it's kind of annoying and it's kind of weird. It's really jarring. And this is also something that I want to show you. So, I got Cryptlord here and Raiders. Now, of course, you never have this army unless you're playing 2v2. But also from creeps, this happens a lot when units get ensnared. So I'm going to show you this here. We're going to aggro these guys. Then we're going to ensnare a couple of targets. And now I'm going to use Impale. And it doesn't hit the ensnare targets. It's really weird. And it's really jarring. And I don't really know why. Maybe it's because the Impale lifts them up in the air and the ensnare, like the visual, the model of the ensnare, so to speak, is connected to the ground. So if it's thrown up in the air, then the ensnare will be pulled to the air. I think it has a visual reason, although I'm not sure. But if the reason is visual, then just don't throw them up in the air or something. But this is what holds back the Cryptlord the most, because Cryptlord can be good in the early game, although right now he's not even that good in the early game. In Undead Mirror, he's barely not playable. In Human Mirror, or against Human, it's barely not playable. And against Night Elf, he's never really playable because Mana Burn and Detonate. So, if this was changed so that Impale can hit targets that are ensnared and webbed and entangled, this would make the Cryptlord way, way more playable and finally give him more of a role in the meta. It would be a big buff, of course, because nowadays, counter to the Cryptlord is oftentimes you just make air units. You're playing against Cryptlord, you make Wyvern. You're playing against Cryptlord, you make Griffins. And that's also very boring, just having huge air armies. They are by nature less interactive than ground armies. So I think this would be a very good change to the Cryptlord. Next up, we got the Lich. Lich is a very strong hero, and especially he is too strong in the late game, in the end game against Human. Like I pointed out, I just forgot. I want to mention something else. I'm going to try to remember in a moment. So, when I was talking about the Blademaster, I was saying Blademaster is strong in the late game, but he might have too much of a cap in the ultra late game, in the crazy end game. And I said also how I didn't used to like caps in the past, but I have come to think now that caps are necessary in some cases. And I think the Dark Ritual needs a cap. If you use Dark Ritual on a Skelly, it's fine. If you use Dark Ritual on a Ghoul, it's fine. If you use Dark Ritual on a Fiends, also it's pretty fine, especially if you're playing one base. But if you have two bases and a lot of gold, and you use Dark Ritual on an A-bomb, I think that is not fine. Dark Ritual level 2 is basically the only thing we're talking about here, because Dark Ritual level 3 is very rare to reach. Dark Ritual level 1 seems fine. But Dark Ritual level 2 on an A-bomb is 600 mana. 240 gold for an A-bomb, 600 mana. Of course, you have to kill the A-bomb with that, but that is way, way too much still. This is way too much value. It's, yeah, a 240 gold mana potion for 600 mana. Way too much. I suggest we introduce a cap here. For level 1 Dark Ritual, the max cap of mana you can get is 150. For level 2, it's 300. For level 4, it's 450. Then there's more reason also to go for level 3 Dark Ritual. This will make the end game for human way more manageable, way more playable against Undead, when the Lich doesn't have just absolutely infinite mana. And next up, the Dreadlord. He is... let me think about that. He is definitely, must be, definitely the least played hero in the game. He is similar to the Warden, kind of weak early, and completely insane in the late game. Not so crazy on level 5, but completely insane on level 6. I think we need to bring the Dreadlord somewhere in the middle. We need to make him a bit worse in the end game, and a bit better in the early game. So for the end game, reduce Infernal Duration by 60 seconds, reduce Carrion Swarm level 3 damage by 10, to again make him not so insane in the late game, end game. But I think early game he should do much better. I think the Dreadlord actually has a really cool design. He is this hunter in the night. Dreadlord, interestingly, by the way, he is the lowest strength hero in the game, and I think that's cool. He's like this demon, so to speak, this predator in the night. He has lots of damage potential, but not very tanky. There's other tanky heroes, especially for Undead, who would fill that role. Cryptlord being number 1, with lots of HP and armor. Dreadlord actually has really good attack speed, but low strength, not very tanky at all. Biggest issue for the Dreadlord, though, is when he runs out of mana, he does almost nothing. So I suggest we buff Sleep. Sleep is a little bit too expensive in mana. I think we should bring down the Sleep mana cost just a little bit. 5 on every level. And the more important one, increase the Sleep invulnerable duration. So when you use Sleep on a target, the target is slept, obviously, but for the first 2 seconds right now, it can also not be attacked to be woken up by anyone. There's still a counter to this, of course. You can still always just dispel. You can dispel always immediately, but woken up through right-click, he cannot be. But 2 seconds is a very short duration. I think we could bring that up to 3 seconds. That gives the Dreadlord more control in the early game, more potential to be perhaps played as a first hero, which seems to be the only way that the Dreadlord can really be played. But perhaps, if the invul duration is longer, if you can use more disable, maybe Dreadlord can even be usable as a third hero. But it seems hard to make work. And this would be kind of a ambitious change. I would think it would be cool also if you could sleep an ally. This is mainly there so that when one of your units gets focused heavily with something like Ensnare, Hex, Target, Fire, Stormbolt, whatever it is, you could sleep your own unit, make it invulnerable for 2 or 3 seconds, and then break that damage chain. That's something that has been implemented in Dota 2, by the way, a long time ago. Gives him a very interesting different role, could give him a very interesting different role. But I could also understand if people say this is too complicated for an RTS. I could get behind that as well. Maybe that's a bit too complicated, but I think it would be cool for the hero. The big problem, though, and I think this is not really arguable. Oh my god, there's only slide 12. Holy shit. I got 24 slides. The big issue with the Dreadlord is Vamp Aura does not work. I think we should just straight up remove Vamp Aura. When Blizzard designed the races, they wanted to have 2 auras for every race. Brilliance and Devotion. Kodo Aura and Endurance. Thorns and True Shot. And then Unholy and Vamp Aura. Funnily enough, Vamp Aura works the least for Undead. Because Undead, especially because of Orb of Corruption, they want to have, especially later, largely a ranged army, so you can focus all your damage on one unit and have maximum impact with that orb. And of course, that doesn't really fit well for a melee army. To have lots of value out of Vamp Aura, you need a melee army. In the early game as well, ghouls can heal, maybe a little bit, at the creeps with Vamp Aura. But specifically early game, when armies are small, it's very easy to target those ghouls. Target them one by one. Very little value for many ghouls. So there is basically no value for ghouls. It's just value for the Dreadlord for the most part. Vamp Aura doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can't build big ghoul armies. It's not an army you can play. A-bomb armies, probably also something you can't play. But even if you could, you can't design an aura about being, first usable with the A-bomb army 20 minutes into the game. So Vamp Aura, I think, should just be scrapped from the Dreadlord. It's fine to be kept as an item, but it just doesn't work. With the way Undead is designed, with the way the units work, with the way the game is played, it straight up doesn't work. Simple as that. So, I suggest we replace the aura with a passive, and the passive only works for the Dreadlord. We call that Vampiric Touch. I think this is a cool name that I didn't come up with myself. This was a talent or something for the Dreadlord in Heroes of the Storm. I think this sounds very cool, very poetic, if you will. Vampiric Touch. This still gives the Dreadlord lifesteal, just as before. We're going to boost the lifesteal a little bit, because it used to be 20, 35, 50 for a whole army, but now we remove the aura. We give a little bit more for the Dreadlord solo, 25, 40, 55. So this is the baseline. It just gives him lifesteal. But then, how about we lean into the fantasy of the Dreadlord? How about we play with his theme a little bit? He's a hunter in the night, right? He's supposed to be this terror of nighttime. He can put people to sleep. He haunts you in your dreams. He has blood on his mouth. He wants to attack you and kill you and suck your blood. He should be a terrifying hunter in the night. I think that's a cool idea. And that's not an idea I came up with. This is an idea, I guess, that Blizzard kind of had, and that Dota expanded on. Many of you will be familiar with the Night Stalker. Night Stalker, really cool hero in Dota. In Dota 2, I think in Dota 1 he even had the same model as the Dreadlord. And the Night Stalker is a very weak hero at daytime, and the craziest OP strong hero at nighttime. At least this used to be the case until like 6 years ago, when I still played Dota 2. I don't know what it's like now, but in Dota 2, his spells all got better at nighttime. He got crazy move speed and attack speed, and I think also damage. It was really cool because you knew at daytime he's weak. At nighttime, all of a sudden, you gotta be afraid. You gotta adjust your playstyle. You feel really strong with the Night Stalker when you're playing him. At nighttime, it gives you this great feeling of power, but then you know there's gonna be the daytime coming. You know you're gonna be getting much weaker. Like a vampire, obviously, is what this all is pointing towards. And the Dreadlord is that vampire hero with a vampiric touch, with putting people to sleep and all that. Having high damage, but being pretty fragile. Now, we can't go as crazy as in Dota 2. Because this is not a MOBA. We can't just give him like 50 damage, and I think he also has like an ability where he can fly during nighttime, which is amazing, but of course we can't do that in Warcraft 3. So here we gotta be a little bit more conservative, but I think we can still lean into this fantasy to make the Dreadlord more interesting and stronger in the early game, which he needs to be, and maybe most importantly, way more fun to play. So, at nighttime, this passive, so it always gives lifesteal, right? But at nighttime, it also grants 5, 10, 15 bonus damage. And most importantly, this is what makes heroes fun to play, feel fun to play, move speed. We give him 20, 40, 60 flat move speed. Boots of speed, for example, are 50 movement speed. So level 2 passive is still less than boots. But of course, it's not just the move speed. It's also a little bit of damage. It's also a good amount of lifesteal. And of course, the damage and the lifesteal will have synergy. And I think this makes the hero way more interesting, way more playable. I'm not sure if this is enough, but I think it would make him a lot of fun. How about having some fun with these heroes? Yeah, there we go. That's my suggestions for the heroes. Next up, everyone knew I was getting to this. Nerfs on ghouls and destroyers. Like I said earlier, ghouls and destroyers, especially around the 10-minute mark, are too oppressive for the game. We need to nerf them. We need to force undeads to play something else or to play around different timings so that also other races are capable to play something else and undeads are incentivized to play something else. So, reduce destroyer base damage by 1 and reduce ghoul frenzy attack speed bonus from 35 to plus 25. So this is going to be noticeable damage decrease by both these key units. Destroyers are still really good units. They still will be really good units. They are by far the best dispellers in the game. They're extremely mobile. They always get everywhere they need to be for dispel because they are flying units. They're super fast, even faster with Unholy Aura. They have 850 hit points. They're very hard to kill. If you don't have Web or Ensnare, you will know they're very hard to take care of. Gyros, of course, will win in the end game if you have a big army. This is the big reason also why Night Elf can struggle. They don't have Web. They don't have Ensnare. They have a very tough time getting to the destroyers against good undeads who pull them back properly. Destroyers are hard to kill. And I think it's okay that destroyers are hard to kill. They have lots of HP, they have the healing and the move speed and all that. I think that's okay. But what's not okay is that they, as being counter spell casters, that they do still decent to good damage with their magic. Now, it's not much. It's 20 damage, but they have high attack speed, especially good against bears and other heavy armor units. But even against berserkers, if we see Farseer headhunters being played against undeads, still we see lots of destroyers in that game, and they still do decent damage. They should not be doing good damage at all without mana, in my opinion. So their damage should be reduced. Ghoul Frenzy, attack speed, bonus damage, like I point out here, should also be reduced. And that will give a lot more room for other races to play other strategies and not just always be terrified of this Frenzy Ghoul timing attack. I think these nerfs are necessary for a healthier meta. Yeah. Next up, Necromancer. Up until 2 or 3 months ago, I would have said the Necromancer is the most unplayable garbage unit in the game. But that's not true anymore. We're seeing Necro Wagons actually a fair amount, especially against Night Elf. And if we get to a more of an expansion meta, I could also see Necromancers being played more there. Now, I mentioned healing reduction on some of the other units before, like the Sorceress, and the other units are still coming. And here I think also Necromancer should have a healing reduction on Cripple. So if you have healing reduction on one of your units, it has to be a debuff, of course. You debuff the opponent, and then that reduces also their healing. So it cannot be Unholy Frenzy, because you mainly want to Unholy Frenzy your own units. So yeah, I think that would be a cool new addition, giving that ability a new component, rather. And like I said before, with healing being so strong in the game, I will repeat this point, with healing being so strong in the game, I think we should have healing reduction in the game from many different sources. More sources to be shown later. Next up, statues. I think statues, we all know statues are insanely good. Still the best unit in the game, even after some heavy nerfs over the years. But they have some annoying tendencies. Especially the interplay between Necros and statues is terrible. If you play Necros with Unholy Frenzy, your army always loses a bit of HP. 2 HP, 2 HP, 2 HP. And the statues, stupid as they are always healing up to 2 HP. And they're wasting so much of their mana. You can almost never, it feels like, play Necros and statues together because they always immediately run out of mana then. So, similar to what I suggested to the priest earlier, give the statue an AI improvement that it only heals units that are missing at least 10 hit points, so they don't waste so much of their mana. And statues also waste lots of mana on their Spirit Touch, that's their mana regen ability, on destroyers. When destroyers are on top of your army and you use Spirit Touch, the more targets it hits, the more mana it drains, and that drains a lot of mana completely needlessly, because destroyers always go very quickly down to 0 mana, and that mana regen is useless. So, if you exclude destroyers from Spirit Touch, then that makes it a lot less annoying. You don't have to send your destroyers away all the time. Would be a small buff to statues as well, I suppose. Okay, now, this is what I wanted to remember. I didn't point this out earlier. When I talked about expansions, right, this is again a little fast expansion buff. All of the expansion buildings I suggest buffing because, like I said many times over, Expo meta is good. What I wanted to point out there as well, before I stormed ahead to the other topics. Just to go through the matchups, by the way. Undead Mirror, way more interesting with expansion, in my opinion. If it's just Ted Fiends versus Ted Fiends, it's just creeping, going to tier 3, 1 or 2 fights, and then it's over. As I pointed out earlier in the Lin vs. Sock series, if there's expansions happening, there's always moments of vulnerability. There's always windows to try to get aggressive. There's always opportunities to defend well, outplay, and get ahead by being stronger. This is certainly the case in Undead Mirror. Whether it be Crypt expansion or Lich expansion, it gets way more dynamic, way more interesting, again, in my opinion. Knight of Mirror, the same there. I think this is way, way more exciting than just one base Bear Mirror all the time. I would say what I've seen over the years, most viewers would agree with me, Bear Mirror 1 base, pretty dull. Orc Mirror, I was thinking about this earlier. Orc Mirror, we can't really say. There's never been, ever, fast expansion or even expansion meta in Orc Mirror. So there, we cannot really say what that looks like. But as we saw with Sock versus Lin earlier, I think Orc versus Human is way more interesting with expansions. Human versus Night Elf, way more interesting with expansions. Otherwise, it's just a one-base push strat with rifles. Same against Undead, way more interesting with expansions. Otherwise, just one base, rifle push into the enemy base. Then if we look at Undead versus Orc, I will say, they have to admit, even on one base only, it's very interesting, very exciting. That's because we have lots of tier 3 play there, lots of opportunities to still express yourself with different strategies, different heroes. Although I would still say tier 3 expo play has more potential. We're seeing a little bit more expo play lately in Orc versus Undead, although not very much. Orc versus Night Elf, that is the one matchup where we do see expansion play, and it's still very boring. But that's because we see the same thing every time. Raider Walker Expo into Dryad Bear all in. If the Night Elf could properly counter-expand, and it's 2-base, all of a sudden, that is also way more interesting. It's kind of like reminiscent, actually, of, if you think about it, the way Orc versus Night Elf is right now, kind of similar to how Undead versus Human was back in the day, where Human was the one expanding, Undead had to go all in, and then there's one attack, you win, and if you don't break him, you lose. Very binary. This is why Night Elf vs. Orc is pretty boring at the moment. It is a very balanced matchup, Night Elf vs. Orc, but very boring. The same thing all the time. If Night Elves could counter-expand, way more interesting in my opinion. What else are we missing as far as matchups go? Night Elf vs. Undead. I think also that one is way more interesting with fast expansions. We used to have fast expo meta there for a while, until Night Elves got really good at that. Undeads didn't play it anymore. If expanding was more the meta again, as it could be with Destroyer and Frenzy timing being weaker, which is right now dominating the meta, I think that would also make for a more interesting meta game. Like I said before, I know it's a bit of a matter of taste, matter of preference. Not everyone sees it that way, but I certainly do think that the expansion play is a lot more dynamic and interesting. All right. Just forgot to say that earlier. Next up, Night Elf. All right, couple of issues here. Everyone hates Demon Hunter Dryad Bears, but as Neo nicely pointed out before, we can't really blame the Night Elf players because it's just so good and so synergistic. I think more than Demon Hunter and Dryads, it's mainly the Bears. That's why I have it here as my first point. Night Elf is utterly reliant on Rejuve and Bears, as there are indeed no sufficient other sources of healing. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the stream today. And not everyone realized this, I guess, but if you're watching lots of pro games, like I certainly am, and many of you certainly are, it is a very clear through line. Whenever the Night Elf doesn't have Rejuve, there's never enough healing. And that's not a mistake by the Night Elves. That's a mistake by Blizzard. Night Elf is not properly balanced. The units and heroes and abilities are not properly balanced. Night Elf doesn't work. It simply doesn't work without Rejuve. The Bear is the most important unit by far for Night Elf. Once upon a time, you used to see Keeper hunts, and the Alchemist was trying to keep up with healing, but that didn't really work out over time. More so because the Keeper was nerfed and countered and properly dismantled by enemy races. But healing here also is a big issue. Like, hunts are not good units in any way, shape, or form. But even if they were good units, you still can't play them because they can't heal. This is the number one big problem. The healing problem. The Rejuve dependence problem. And yeah, of course, That is the first big issue, and spawning from that is the reliance on Demon Hunter Dryad Bears. Now, this is a... Can we call it a vicious circle? Maybe it's more of a trickle-down effect. No, not a trickle-down effect. Cascading effect? I don't know the right word for it. Excuse me. But this is a downstream effect, perhaps. So, Night Elves, as established, extremely reliant on Bears and Rejuve. So, if you have to play Bears and Rejuve, then the question is, what is the best strat with Bears and Rejuve? And the answer is Demon Hunter. And it will always be Demon Hunter. Because Rejuve healing is amazing. And you know where it's even more amazing? On strong heroes that can tank a lot of damage. That means they have to be frontline heroes for Rejuvenation to be super efficient on it. If we see Keeper Bears, or somehow even POTM Bears, or Warden Bears, Rejuve is good, but Rejuve isn't insane. Rejuve is only insane on the Demon Hunter, and always will be. The way Demon Hunter works, he's got amazing stats for dishing out damage. He's got evasion, of course, which is incredible. He's got high armor, high move speed, just a stat monster. Rejuve will always be the best on the Demon Hunter. And the reason why people are annoyed with Dryad Demon Bears all the time isn't so much the Dryads and the Bears. Sure, it's dull to see the Rejuve all the time and the same units all the time, but it's mainly the Demon Hunter mana burn. The Demon Hunter mana burn that is so toxic for the game and annoying and frustrating. But I think I may have gotten a bit ahead of myself here. I actually also watched Neo's video, of course, for suggestions, and Neo explained the Night Elf Holy Trifecta so well, so we're going to check that out as well for, I think this is like 2 or 3 minutes.
Too much. And of course, the problem has a name. Demon Hunter, Dryad, Bears. This is nothing new. This is in the game for 24 years. And it's still the problem. And I'm not gonna pretend that I have the solution. I just want to state the obvious
I might have solutions.
to give it a voice. These 3 units solve every problem. The Demon Hunter is a huge DPS machine that's also with mana, like, it has the best scaling stat type in the game with agility. It has a disable with mana burn that renders spell users useless. And thanks to the armor of agility and evasion, it's also a tank. And then you also slap a top tier ultimate on top that makes him even tankier and it gets rid of the one weakness that was melee damage and gives him range. And also AoE is pretty good. I have to also say, though, that the Demon Hunter needs to be enabled. And thankfully, we have the Dryads and the Bears. The Dryads is a tier 2 unit that is magic immune, fast, has an auto-cast Dispel, a free slow that costs no mana, and you have a damage over time that is stackable. That unit is bananas, man. It is range, it has catch, it has Dispel, it's amazing. You slow units down with the Dryad, you kill it with the Demon. Boom. Later on, you think like, okay, your 1 tank is maybe not enough. Maybe I need more. And how do I get all this healing? Thankfully, we have a unit for that. And that is the Bear. I know that the Bear is not the tankiest unit in the game. And I know that the Bear is not the highest damage in the game. But it's pretty damn solid for what it is. It comes online incredibly fast because you can pre-upgrade it already. Which you can't for like a Tauren or an Abomination. And it has the shortest master upgrade next to Necromancers in the game. It also heals you for 400 damage that can't be cancelled by a hit. And it conveniently, if you thought that a Demon Hunter with Immolation doesn't do enough damage, it buffs the entire army by 25% in an AoE with a single use. And if there's any weakness that you don't cover with this holy trinity, then you got the Tavern that evens things out. You cannot blame a Night Elf player for not going for this combo. Why would you? Night Elf, the synergies between these units are so freaking good that you don't need anything else. So this is the best design part of any race in Warcraft 3. And the worst part is that you can delete 40% of the Night Elf tech tree, and most Night Elves wouldn't even notice this. You can delete Huntress, Glaive Throwers, Bottom Keeper, Warden, Ancient Protector, Mountain Giant, Hippo, Talon, and Fairy Dragon, as well as Chimeras, and you would do fine. No other race can say that. No race should be able to say that. And that is the problem that everybody has with elves, and this is why elves is one of the most hated races there is, the most hated races there is. I think everybody respects the players. We love to cheer for Moon. We love to cheer for...
Really good points. Neo sums this up so well. I think people like to meme on Night Elf, hate on Night Elf a little bit. It's boring, it's the same units all the time, you know, it's dull. But if not for Demon Mana Burn, the hate would be way, way lower. The tech tree issue is big, but I think the Demon Hunter Mana Burn issue is just as big. I'm gonna get into it.
Jens, Kevin, whatever it is, man. But we see this day in, day out. And I am so sure that even Night Elves hate it. They are. I don't know how to do this, man. Oh, I kind of forgot to show you the thingies here. Why is this another problem? Because the solutions that you also have are outshined. Mass Dryads is a better anti-caster than Fairy Dragons ever could be. You don't...
Alright. Yeah, I think this was really, really well done. Great summary by Neo. Now he says he doesn't know how to do it. I have some ideas. We're gonna get into it here in a moment. Yeah, this was the second part. Third, Demon Hunter outshines everybody. Other three Night Elf heroes are... Wait, let me put myself over here. Are way, way, way weaker. Warden never works as anything as a first hero. Keeper can work as something else, but especially Keeper should be a great first hero. Doesn't work, he's too weak. POTM is a joke. Absolute garbage tier hero. Yeah, Night Elf really, really needs some balancing on their heroes. And Mana Burn, I think, is the single most horrible, limiting, frustrating, bullshit mechanic in the game. And yeah, those are the big issues. Balance-wise, they seem to be in a pretty good spot against Undead and Orc. It seems pretty balanced, except against Human, of course. Human, as we mentioned, losing to everybody at the moment. Once again, Sok in the last 5 days might have changed something, but let's not forget about those other 5 months. So, here come my suggestions. Some are a bit more complicated, some a bit less. Can you read that over here with the Warden? Okay, let's do the Warden first. The Warden is the simplest and the least important. The Warden seems really good very rarely. Sometimes against Human on the right map in a macro game, 2 base versus 2 base, the Warden, if she gets level 5 and 6, is insane. The Warden, same as the Dreadlord, is too strong on level 5 and on level 6. But kind of weak, maybe too weak in the early stages. The Warden, Shadow Strike especially, sees almost no play. Shadow Strike is very weird scaling. It is 10, 30, 45, as if Shadow Strike level 1 was too strong. Shadow Strike level 1 is terrible. Why is Shadow Strike level 1 so weak? Why is this scaling so especially bad? I think we just give it simply 15 more damage per tick. That makes it a total of 25 more damage per Shadow Strike. I think that's totally fine. The bigger issue, and I think the really unexciting thing about Shadow Strike is it takes forever to do the damage. So it ticks every 3 seconds. It has 5 ticks. That is a total of 15 seconds for which the Shadow Strike takes time to do its damage. I think it's way too long. Let's reduce those tick intervals to 1.5 seconds. Still 5 ticks, so it's the same amount of damage. But I still suggest level 1 buff, damage buff. Same amount of damage over half the duration. That is a considerable buff for Shadow Strike, which I think it could use. Now, Fan of Knives, level 1, level 2, kind of weak. This is a considerable buff that I'm suggesting here. We straight up increase the target cap, the amount of units you can hit by 1 on all levels. Level 1, who cares? Shadow Strike, bad on level 1. Level 2, this is a significant buff to Warden on level 3. I think it's okay, but we have to seriously nerf level 3 Fan of Knives. The fact that the Warden can just blink around the map once she gets level 5 and harass economy and do thousands of points of damage and instantly kill workers so easily over and over. That is way too strong. Way too strong. We need to seriously nerf the damage on level 3. The overall damage is still going to be basically the same, increasing the targets from 6 to 7. But of course, the flat damage done is significantly lower. And that would make her way more healthy. She is going to have a better curve coming out of the early game, but isn't as completely busted in the late game, especially with that Peasant / Acolyte / maybe Peon hunt. Peons have burrows, though. Especially Peasant and Acolyte hunt. Insane. And then she has an incredible ultimate. Ultimate is unbelievable already, and one of the things I hate the most, permanent invulnerability. The stupid Spirits of Vengeance. It has 100% uptime already, this ultimate. It's like 2-minute duration, 2-minute cooldown, or is it 3 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever. 100% uptime on the ultimate. And the spirits are invulnerable. That is complete BS. We have to remove that invulnerability. Anything that's permanently invulnerable is some bullshit. And with all those changes, I think the Warden would be in a much better spot. Keeper. He's the easiest, most straightforward hero to fix for the Night Elves. Keeper has a decent toolkit. He should be good as a first hero, but he's not good as a first hero. Simply because the numbers aren't there. The Keeper is too bad. The Treants are too bad. But we're not far off. We're not super far off from being decent, from being playable. So we just need a little tweak, make him a little bit better, to finally give the Keeper the presence that he deserves. One more base int for the Keeper, one more base damage for the Treants, and I think then we're talking. This makes the early game creeping for him much better. The harass potential maybe better. The expo potential maybe better. This makes everything a bit better, while also, by the way, not buffing the Keeper second. The Demon Hunter Dryad Bear into Keeper, we don't want to see that every goddamn game. Having him just have one more int there in the mid game won't have as big impact nearly as this is going to have in the early game. Especially, of course, because Treants are only played as a first hero. Almost only. There's these weird other cases, but for the most part. Now, the most controversial take that I have, perhaps. Mana burn, like I've said many times, today and in recent years, I think it is very toxic for the game, and I think I can prove that to you. When the opponent has a Demon Hunter, especially Demon Hunter first, there are so many things you cannot do. Like I said earlier, it's honestly kind of similar with Frenzy Destroyer timing. There's also a lot of things you cannot do. But with the Demon Hunter, it's even worse. With the Demon Hunter, it's not just about a certain strength of heroes or strategies. It's simply the design that doesn't work. Meaning, if, for example, Beastmaster was a very strong hero with his summons, you could still, even if he was very strong, never play him against Demon Hunter because the mana is removed. The mana. Only heroes playable against Demon Hunter are the ones that don't need mana, basically, and that is stupid. Mana is the source of life. It is the fun of life, and it makes Warcraft special with the abilities. It is the most exciting thing about the game. Let's go through the list, shall we? Alchemist, unplayable against Demon Hunter. Archmage, yeah, he's playable. He's got a mana aura, not so reliant on spells. Beastmaster, unplayable. Blademaster, he is very playable because he has crit. He doesn't need mana. Lucky you, don't need mana. Bloodmage, now this is the most egregious thing. Bloodmage, he's supposed to be a counter to Demon Hunter because he has the higher potential mana drain versus mana burn. If you don't counter mana drain, siphon mana, then there's higher potential there, but of course, it's way easier to counter. Mana burn is almost impossible to counter. Bloodmage used to be a good counter to Demon Hunter. Not anymore, though, because as I pointed out earlier, Bloodmage is just straight up terrible right now. Especially Siphon is terrible. Continuing on. Cryptlord, unplayable. Dark Ranger, unplayable. DK, he's playable. He's got an aura. He doesn't need mana so bad. Demon Hunter, the only other hero you can play in Night of Mirror, because you need to fight fire with fire. You need to fight mana burn with fire. Dreadlord, unplayable. Farseer, unplayable. Firelord, he is kind of playable, because of Incinerate especially, and maybe Soulburn in the right spot. Keeper, unplayable. Lich, he is playable, because he is ranged and good right click and doesn't need mana so bad. Mountain King, he's right on that edge. I won't be lying to you here and say that Mountain King isn't playable. He is kind of barely playable, but in the last 5 months, with the exception of this last week, has also been looking useless for the most part. Naga, she is playable. Pally, unplayable. Panda, unplayable. Pitlord, unplayable. That's more the Pitlord's fault, though. He's just straight up unplayable. POTM, this also makes me so mad. POTM, like, design-wise, she should be the perfect hero against mana burn. She has an orb that costs almost no mana, and she has an aura that costs no mana. Yet, the POTM is still not playable. That's mainly because she is hot garbage tier, though. This is not the Demon Hunter's fault. This is the POTM's fault, to be honest. Shadowhunter, barely playable, because this is the one matchup where with Mass, Ensnare, and big armies, you can stay out of range of mana burn. TC unplayable, Tinker unplayable, Warden unplayable. So, this is 14 out of 24 heroes that are unplayable. How did this ever get through QA? How did this ever get through quality assurance? One ability makes 14 out of 24 heroes unplayable. This is a disaster. This is a balance and a design disaster. I hate it. I hate it so much. This is the most bullshit thing in all of Warcraft. Something that I think we have had to live with for far too long. This is absolutely ridiculous. I think mana burn should straight up be removed. Remove it from the game. Replace it with something else. Replace it with a good ability. A strong ability. Nobody is going to hate the Demon Hunter if he doesn't have mana burn. It is just the most BS thing ever imagined. Now, I have tried to come up with other answers to the Demon Hunter, to what abilities you could have. Heroes of the Storm. Wait. There's this wiki, right? I tried to see if there's some interesting abilities here. On the wiki. So he's got like Dive and Betrayer's Thirst and Sweeping Strike. I think this is kind of like charge moves that he can do and flipping over opponents. I didn't really get a great inspiration here. I didn't find anything great. I tried to think about abilities that could work well on him. I tried to come up with a spell concept, but that is really not what I'm very good at. I am not super creative at coming up with something out of the blue, coming up with a spell that works super well with a hero that ideally also is thematically tied in with him. This is where I would have to get help from somewhere else. I am not good at coming up with new abilities, but the best thing that could happen to the Demon Hunter, and maybe to the whole game, is to remove mana burn with something else. Now the cool thing is, game designers are way more creative, I imagine, than I am. So if they could come up with something to replace mana burn, that would be amazing. However, being realistic, I doubt this is gonna happen. It would be amazing if mana burn was finally removed, but I doubt it. You know what I just realized? I didn't mention before. Man, this presentation is all over the place. These stars represent the changes I think that will be the best and most interesting for the game, and in some cases, the healthiest. In case you were wondering what those stars were, that's what they are. Yeah, I doubt we're going to see mana burn being replaced, though, like I say, I think it will be the best thing ever for the game. And okay, if it doesn't get replaced, I guess that's all right. It's not really all right, but I think it's what we have to live with. But it cannot be that the Demon Hunter can counter so many heroes so effortlessly in such a frustrating way. That just cannot be the case. So, if mana burn has to be in the game, then I think it has to be one of these two nerfs that we have to see. If the Demon Hunter can counter all the melee heroes that need mana, all of them, then that is some bullshit. But I guess that's something that he can do. But what cannot be the case is that the Demon Hunter counters all the melee heroes that need mana and all the ranged heroes that need mana. That is ridiculous. For that reason, I think the range should be significantly decreased on mana burn from 300 to 200. That is one way to go. The other way to go is to consider his mana pool. It is ridiculous how the Demon Hunter, who doesn't need much mana, can burn thousands of mana without ever being concerned about his own mana pool. many years ago, Blizzard was trying to go that direction already, increasing the mana burn cost to 60 on all levels, especially in the early game. That made him very susceptible, way harder to heal from Moonwells and so on. So level 1 mana cost shouldn't be changed, but level 2 mana burn cost could be increased, and level 3 mana burn cost especially could be increased. Having 150 mana burn on level 3 burn is insane. Mana burn, by the way, also decreases in cooldown the higher level it is, in case you guys didn't know that. So these are the two things that you could tackle mana burn. Either increase the mana cost on higher levels, or decrease the range. To finally, at least, allow some more counterplay against this most ridiculous of all abilities, that ideally still should be replaced. But let's be real, how likely is that to happen? I don't think very likely. Okay, last hero for Night Elves. All those heroes are not in a good spot. All those heroes need attention. And most of all, it is the POTM. POTM, interesting hero. She is the weakest designed hero that Blizzard ever made. I feel like POTM must have been the first hero that Blizzard ever made. And it must have been made by like an intern who was only there over the weekend. Because the design is so dumb. It has an arrow effect that gives her more damage. Then it has an aura that gives her and her allies more damage. It has an ult where in an AoE it does damage. Pretty repetitive, as you might know. And then she has a summon, and the summon, very interesting, looks at stuff. And it's permanently invulnerable. Another bullshit thing, permanent invulnerability, like I pointed out before. The POTM also, she's so bad, like so poorly designed, and so weak as a hero. Just to put this in perspective, mana, right? Mana is an important resource for pretty much every hero, pretty much any game you ever played. Mana is an important resource. Not for the POTM. Not enough, certainly. The POTM is the only hero in the game where, with infinite mana, she would still be bad. That is not hyperbole. That is fact. If the POTM had 1,000 mana, she is still garbage. If the POTM had 1,000,000 mana, she is still garbage. That is insane. That is terrible hero design. There needs to be more mana, what's it called? Mana pressure? Mana tension, that's the word. There needs to be more mana tension on the POTM to actually have a good ability. However, also I think the POTM should work well without mana, especially to have a counter to Demon Hunter to finally free us from the oppressive nature of Bear Mirror. So I suggest 2 changes here to the POTM's abilities. The ult is fine, the aura is fine, the rest is not. First off, Searing Arrow is just straight up too bad. It is terrible. Like I said, even if you had infinite mana, Searing Arrow is still too bad. So we need to boost the damage, first and foremost. Go from 12, 24, 48 to 15, 30, 50. This might still not be enough, by the way. That's how insanely bad Searing Arrow is. Also, it is way too much mana. We need to get inspiration here from the Firelord. Firelord's Orb can be really good in the right scenario. One of the great things about the Firelord Orb is it's very low on mana, so you can still use other abilities, or even if you run out, you have a decent uptime on Incinerate, on his Orb effect. Firelord Orb is only 3 mana. Why is the POTM Orb 8 mana? That is some BS. There are some orbs that are lots of mana, like for example Cold Arrow, I think it's 10, or maybe 8. But Cold Arrow is crazy good. It slows down an opponent, it has proper target fire, the Naga is also a really good right clicker. Searing Arrow is none of those things. POTM also has very slow attack speed. POTM is just ridiculous how bad she is. We need a serious buff on Searing Arrow. And of course, the POTM Owl Scout is damn stupid. It is a summon that just looks at things and sees invis things. And even when you level her up, she only gets like more vision range and like maybe more duration. Boring, stupid. And here we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, folks. We can give the POTM a new good role to finally fill a missing hole and solve a problem the Night Elf has had for decades. This is the point, of course, I brought up earlier. Night Elf is utterly reliant on bear healing. They need rejuve to function on the top level. They could play something other than bears if they had some other healing. And the POTM needs to be that healing hero. It makes sense thematically even. Tyrande, the Priestess of the Moon, she can also heal in Heroes of the Storm. It is in the name. The priests are the healers. In this case, this POTM would be a bit of a battle healer. She can be also doing damage, but she needs to be a healer. And she needs to have, obviously, an AoE heal ability. Because Rejo is single target, and Moonwells are single target. The POTM needs to have an AoE heal ability. Now, I tried to come up with an AoE heal ability, and honestly, I will say, this is not the most exciting AoE heal of all time. This is not super fun and amazing of an AoE ability, but it is serviceable. It does work, and I think the numbers are right to make this playable. However, I am sure that someone can come up with a better AoE heal ability. I'm not saying this has to be the exact skill of the POTM, but what I'm saying is the POTM needs an AoE healing spell. This is desperately needed for the Night Elf race. And this is what I came up with. So, the Scout is replaced with a new ability. The name is changed, Guardian of Elune. It costs 80 mana, it's an 11-second cooldown. And it's a heal, as you will see. It summons an owl, so it's the same owl. 40 hit points, 80 hit points, 120 hit points on level 1, 2, 3. No longer invulnerable or spell immune, because that is some bullshit. And a 10-second duration. The owl possesses the Light of Elune aura. So the owl has an aura that it affects allied units with in an AoE, which regenerates hit points. 8, 15, 22 on level 1, 2, 3. Now, I spent a lot of time thinking about these numbers, and I'm not sure that these numbers are exactly right. We should be testing that on a PTR, ideally, but I think they are kind of in the ballpark. Now, this is healing over time, obviously, and it has lots of potential in the late game. The bigger your army is, the more the aura can affect, the better it is. So, 8 HP per second sounds a lot for level 1. That would be 80 hit points for 80 mana. Pretty straightforward. But to put that in perspective, Alchemist, for example, level 1 heal spray, 30 per wave, 3 waves, it's 75 mana, 75 mana, 90 healing. So, in comparison there, the POTM Owl is worse. But of course, there's some other drawbacks. With heal spray, you have to stay still. You can't be creeping too easily. The Alchemist can't attack. And so on. But we have to give the POTM... Whoops. Yeah, like I said, we have to give the POTM a healing ability. And I am, first of all, glad to be proven wrong that these numbers are either too high or too low. I feel like they're unlikely to be too low. Or I'm also happy to be shown a better AoE heal. If there's a better, cooler, more fun AoE heal, maybe more interactive, that's great. I'm glad to pass that one away. But we have to see and agree. POTM needs AoE healing. So bad. So bad. There's one other way to solve this issue, by the way, of AoE or of healing dependency. And that is to give a healing item to the Night Elf shop, similar to Regen Scroll, similar to Ritual Dagger. But I think that's kind of boring. I think healing abilities are always more interesting on heroes. And also, if we do that in the shop, then we might just have more bears with more healing. You have healing from bears, you make a shop, you have even more healing from the shop. The great thing is, POTM and bears are kind of mutually exclusive. Not exactly, but for the most part. Because the POTM has an early power spike in the mid-game. Also, she supports ranged units with the aura. Maybe there's a way to play POTM with bears, but it seems unlikely. So there's different styles, different strats, different ways of healing that are not just going to be stacked on top of each other. If we give a healing item to the Night Elf shop, like I said, it might just be bears for healing plus shop for healing. Nothing changes. Yeah. High potential, by the way, for lots of healing in the late game. So if you get to level 5 POTM, if you get the level 3 Owl, for 80 mana, you can heal 220 hit points on your whole army. Imagine, if you get to this game state, maybe it's possible, a big Huntress Archer army, if you heal up like 10 units at the same time, that's a lot. So this Owl has to be killable. It cannot be invulnerable just floating across your army, giving you all that region all the time in the fight. You can use it in a fight, but there has to be counterplay as well, which I think is cool. That's interactive. Maybe you do use the owl. Maybe you pull back herd units to the back of the fight. They're healing there, the owl on top, but they're not in the fight having that crazy HP regen. A nice reference point here to take, by the way, also is statues. Statue healing, for example, is really good, as we know. And statue healing is roughly 7.5 per second. Is that right? I think that's right. More like 7 HP per second. So the POTM level 1 would be better than that, but of course the POTM heal costs a lot of mana. You can't just spam that endlessly. And also it takes a hero slot. It takes a hero skill slot, which is very valuable. Again, I come back to the Alchemist, who technically heals more, especially in the early game. But the late game heal potential here could be really big. And it seems like this would make sense with hunts as well, because hunts can have sometimes a decent place in the meta to be played, but normally hunts take damage, they're low HP, you can pull them back well because they have good move speed and decent HP, you save them, but there's never enough moon juice to heal them up. And of course you can't play bears, because if you go mass hunts, there's no time or money to go bears normally. But if you pull back the herd hunts, you have an owl somewhere there healing them. That is that healing tool that might be necessary. It also means the hunts are going to be less scary, of course, or the army, if there's either Searing Arrow or Aura missing. But yeah, I think it is clear as day that Night Elf really needs an AoE healing ability. With Desperation, I think it's not even remotely a question. Alright. Sorry if I took a long time to explain all that and to state my views, but I think this is really, really, really desperately needed for the race. And for us to finally something else other than Demon Dryad Bears all the time. Okay, next up. Fairy Fire, or let's say Talons. Talons are one of those units that are never really played. Maybe Talons can be good sometimes, we don't really know. It's because we see Dryad Bears all the time. There's no good reason to play Talons. Like Neo pointed out earlier as well when I showed his video. Dryad Bears counters everything else better than all the other Night Elf units. So why would you play Talons? Well, how about we give them a new effect? This is the healing reduction again that I was talking about. I suggested it for the Necros and the Sorcs, and I think it should also be on the Talons. This would be really good, especially in Elf Mirror. Against Bears, against Rejuve, this could be amazing. Give it healing reduction, give it less mana to be more spammable. This is the same point as earlier with Sorcs. If the spells are more spammable, you don't care about them so much being dispelled. I think casters are very interesting and exciting for the game. I think Blizzard in general overdid it a little bit with countering spellcaster meta that was apparently so good in Reign of Chaos. I wasn't there. Anyways, I'm getting away from my point here, perhaps a bit. Ranting. But yeah, if Fairy Fire is that good and that cheap, we should just straight up remove the vision and true set aspect of this ability. It's very annoying if you're retreating from a fight, especially orcs will know this feeling still from back in the day. You're Fairy Fired up, you can't dispel it at the moment. Your opponent has perfect vision of you for like 2 minutes or however long it lasts. I think that is some BS. Remove the vision, remove the true sight, but give it healing reduction. I think that's way more interesting, way more exciting for the game, and less mana, indeed. And next up, Dryads. I think this is the single most important change that I have in all of my suggestions. And as you can tell, it's many. We should switch the attack upgrade from Strength of the Moon to Strength of the Wild to Strength of the Moon. I will show you here once again. Hunter's Hall. Strength of the Wild. What do we upgrade here? Bears, crows, dryads, MGs, fairies, hippos, chimps. 7 units. Nowhere else is it so many units being upgraded from one upgrade. It is crazy. And it is, conveniently, all the good late game units. Isn't that something? On the other side, Strength of the Moon, archers, hunts, glaives, hippo riders. None of these are good late game units. Maybe hippo riders in some weird meta that we haven't seen yet. These are all early game, mid game units. This is terrible. We need to give Night Elves more reason to play something else than just Dryad, Demon Hunter, Bears every game. The Dryad attack upgrade should be here, in the Strength of the Moon. This means also things like archers into dryads are more playable. Hunts into dryads, especially, are more playable. Then they share the Hunter's Hall as well. In my opinion, this is the most healthy change that we can make for the game. Especially in Night Elf versus Human, it has become extremely evident how cost efficient and too convenient the Dryad Bear army is. Like, we've seen so many games of SOC, playing Fast Expo, going MK, going Tier 3, going Frag Shards, Master Training, Inner Fire, Triple Hero, Siphon, Clap, Invis, crazy plays here and there. Night Elves against that, do they go Fairy Dragons? No. Do they go Chims? No. Do they go Triple Hero? No. Do they go Glaives? No. What do they go? Demon, Naga, Dryads, and Bears. And upgrades. Tons and tons and tons of upgrades. 1-1, quick. 2-2, pretty fast. 3-3, quite quick. Nobody can keep up with that upgrade pace. Dryads need to be in a different bucket. Dryads cannot be in the same upgrade attack bucket as Bears. In my opinion, this change has to happen. This is going to be finally a big incentive for Night Elf to play something other than just these 2 units all the goddamn time with these 2 or 3 heroes. All the goddamn time. And there's going to be more incentives coming. Stay tuned. I'm continuing right now. Continuing with the underused units. Warple Blades on Glaives, bad. Never really good. There was 2 or 3 weeks where we saw Life playing exciting stuff with Hunts and Glaives and POTM. There's some potential there, but again, it's too bad. It's too weak. The humans found out how to counter it, and then it was trash again. Glaive Thrower, one of those units that's just terrible. I don't think we want to buff the standard Glaive. That still serves the purpose to break a siege if you really have to, or maybe make a push happen if you really have to. But siege units with upgrades should be decent at least. Meatwagon with Disease, good. Mortars with Frag Shards, good. Of course, Demolishers are totally useless. But as I pointed out earlier, there should be a buff there as well. Hippogriffs, another very bad unit. We don't see them as anti-air. We don't see them as Hippo Riders. They're just not good enough. I think we just make them a little bit cheaper. Maybe that gives them more potential to be played. Next up, Huntresses. So Huntresses are by far the worst tier 1 unit in the game. If you ever build hunts on the pro level, you are making a mistake. Okay, there's some very few exceptions. If you play insane like Moon today with the Huntress AP push, but that normally doesn't work, right? That normally doesn't happen. Hunters were supposed to get a big buff with the Moonglaive upgrade that gave them heavy armor. Lots of people were concerned. I also a little bit. Turned out that changed nothing. Hunts are still bad. So hunts are bad with the upgrade, and hunts are bad without the upgrade, and hunts are bad in the mid game, and really bad in the late game, and also kind of bad in the early game. Huntresses are just insanely bad. In a recent patch, in a concern for the bouncing glaives against buildings, a change was made where bouncing glaives no longer bounce from buildings to anything. That was overly conservative, that was overly worried, overly concerned. And now they just, they seem to do nothing. Not good against buildings, not good against workers, not against armies, not good nowhere. Excuse me. So, we should revert the bouncing interaction change with buildings. So the bounces just normally travel from building to whatever. And also, and this is a Huntress straight up buff, just Huntress as a unit baseline, I think we should change the damage reduction from glaive bounce from 50 to 40%. So what that means is, when the glaive bounces from the first target to the second, it reduces its damage by 50%, right? I suggest we make it so it reduces the damage by 40%. So it still does 60% of the damage on the first bounce. And then on the second bounce, again, it reduces the damage by 40%. This is going to be a significant buff to hunts without Moonglaive upgrade and with Moonglaive upgrade. And I think that's a buff they desperately need because they are terrible. Another upgrade, another issue with Moonglaive is, well, everyone thought it was going to be a very good upgrade. It really wasn't a good upgrade. And it's also super expensive. It costs a lot of lumber, especially, and also maybe a bit too much gold. I suggest we bring down that cost to make it more in line with how good hunts are and make it more playable. Now, first unit buff here, I suppose. MG nerf. MG nerf on resistance skin. This is targeted at exactly Night Elf Mirror. MGs right now serve as a good counter against Talons. Good Night Elves can make Talon strats work against bears. But the really sad thing is, if you're trying to counter bears and you're getting scouted, the opponent against your Talons isn't going to make bears, he's just going to make MGs. And the great thing is, it's from the same building. He doesn't even have to change anything. That Ancient of Lore, man, isn't it something? It's got all those things. It's got bears, it's got dryads, it's got MGs. Ancient of Lore has everything. So we at least need to widen the gap. We need to widen the window for the Talon player to be stronger. And the 15 seconds research time where MGs, that MGs will need for resistance skin is going to help a lot with that. If people are concerned about this affecting other matchups, then they shouldn't be. Because we never see resistance skin basically anywhere. In a very, very rare case, we see it against Undead, when the Undead is trying to tech off of 2 bases into mass Banshees, and that takes like 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, you're going to find the time for 15 seconds of resistance skin. Alright. Moving on. Buildings, items, and upgrades. Again, this is the Ancient of Wonders here in the top left. I think Night Elf is too reliant on Demon Hunter. This is the through line of this whole thing. If they played other heroes, POTM, Keeper, Warden, they need more mana. The great thing about Demon Hunter also is he needs no mana. He needs no clarities. If the shop was cheaper, then it's easier to get to clarities. It's easier to play mana heroes. Also, Wand of Negation, I think, would be cool to have in the Night Elf shop. If you don't play Dryads, you can get screwed a lot by certain strats if you don't have Dispel. If we put the Wand of Negation in the Night Elf shop on tier 2, I think that would be really good to make strategies outside of Dryads more playable. Now, there might be a little problem with this idea, because the Night Elf shop on tier 2 has all of these items already. So this is basically the tier 2 row, and that one's full already. I think we could put the Wand of Negation here and still make it tier 2. If it's grayed out on tier 1, that might be a little bit weird, but I think it would be okay. However, if we really want to have clear rows and all that, I think we could just put the Mana Potion on tier 1 and have the Wand of Negation on tier 2. Wand of Negation, of course, should certainly not be available on tier 1. That would be a little bit too good. Mana Potion, though, on tier 1, I think that's fine. Call me crazy. I think that's fine. They also have long cooldowns. Yeah. Okay, resource cost of the Tree of Life. I suggest slight resource buffs for all the races on the expansions, because again, I think expos are the most fun way to play the game, and they're not encouraged enough at the moment. Now, the other expo buildings, you may remember, I suggested mainly gold being reduced, not so much the lumber. Here, this I think is the perfect number. And if you guys realize why that is, then you are expert players or viewers. A couple of months ago, Moon started playing Fast Expo with Tree of Life first. Very interesting. Very exciting. Very different from just the normal standard play that we see all the time. Demon Dryad Bears, 1 base tier 3, that we're all so sick of. If you play Tree of Life first, you have to play a Tavern Hero. You need to play a Tavern Hero. That might be your drawback, but you can get the Tree of Life first. And if we want to encourage this more, we have to reduce the lumber cost by 20. Why 20? Because when the game begins, you start with 150 lumber. What you want to do then is, you put 1 wisp in the gold mine, 3 on lumber, you make more wisps into the gold mine, and the other wisp, number 5, goes to the gold mine right away, waits for one tick of lumber to come in from the lumber wisps, and then you can make the Tree of Life. And that is so cool. And that is so cool. A totally different strategy available. A strategy that's kind of out there already right now, but too weak. Now, people who are very afraid might be saying, oh, this is too strong. It's such an early Tree of Life. It's an early Tree of Life, true, but that Tree of Life still has to build. It still has to walk. It still has to entangle. And all other races can easily fast expand against that, especially Undead and Human. Orc, a little bit more of a question, but Orc can be very aggressive early game if they have to be, to do damage and create space. I think this isn't a necessary change for the meta. Like this Dryad change, I think, is very necessary for the meta. But this would be a very healthy change for the meta, in my opinion. This would be so exciting to see many new different strategies springing from this for Night Elves. Orb of Venom also cost reduced, just like all other orbs, 300 gold, make tier 3 more worthwhile. And then Nature's Blessing. Nature's Blessing, another upgrade that enables many different strategies. Ancient of War plays, maybe, getting aggressive with those Ancients. Also good defensively, of course, for expansion play, which, once more, I think is the right way to go. And also, considerably, good upgrade for Treants for the Keeper. Another hero and ability that is looking very underserved at the moment. This is, I think, way too expensive. 150 gold, 200 lumber. So expensive. I think we can cut that way down to 100, 150. Marksmanship, I think also pretty weak. Archers are the only ranged unit that you can't play in the late game. Fiends, Rifles, Berserkers, and Fiends, Rifles, Berserkers, right. Those three are all playable late game. Archers, not really, mainly because they're too low HP and they get blown up by AoE most of the time. They will still get blown up by AoE, I suppose, the same. But you could give them a little bit more damage. This is a very conservative buff, just +1. And I also think we could remove the Hunter's Hall requirement. I always thought it was weird that for improved bows, you don't need Hunter's Hall, but for marksmanship, you do need Hunter's Hall? Why? I feel like if you really wanted to play without Hunter's Hall, maybe this makes that more feasible. Especially if we have other healing from the POTM, like we should have. And then also Ultravision. I think we should move that upgrade to Tree of Life. This again encourages more expansion play, because if you're just playing one base, rushing tier 3, you hardly have time to go for Ultravision, because on tier 2, you make your wisps, you make your buildings, and then you go tier 3. In the Hunter's Hall, of course, you have the time to go for Ultravision. But if you're playing an expansion and you have 2 Trees of Life, then you can either take some time and upgrade that and not go tier 3 too fast, or you go tier 3 on one tree and you upgrade that on the other tree, making that a little bit more tempting to play expansion. And of course, also, it's another incentive to move away just from Hunter's Hall play all the time and Lore and Dryad Bear all the time. So it tries to support that goal. Alright, that's it for the Night Elves. Next up, we got the neutral heroes. How many slides do we have still, by the way? Oh, we're almost done. Okay, 4 more slides, 5 more slides, and then we're done. So, Beastmaster. This is going to be one of my wilder suggestions. Beastmaster, normally, supposed to be a great early game hero because he's a summoner, right? In the early game, there's not much dispel. So summoner heroes, just logically, must be doing well then, if at any point. Beastmaster doesn't have an aura, doesn't have a supporting ability, doesn't have a great passive. He is the summoner. He is the dude that summons the beasts, which makes sense. He is the Beastmaster. But I think his stats are still too weak. We gave him +2 main stat, which is a huge buff. +2 main stat for a possible first hero. That's huge. And you know what? He's still too bad. I think his armor is too weak. I think he recovers from damage too poorly because the armor is too weak. And we should increase that from 2.2 to 3.2, similar to what I suggested with the TC earlier. More armor, more damage, mitigation makes you more playable as a first hero. I looked through different armor values, by the way, just on a little side note. It's very weird to me that many ranged heroes have more armor than the strength heroes, which are supposed to be the tanky heroes. Archmage, for example, and Farseer have more armor than almost every strength hero. Then there's some exceptions, like the Paladin. I think the Paladin has 3.8 armor. Yeah, weird. It makes sense for some heroes to be very low armor, like the Alchemist. That's kind of his thing. He's super low armor, but he has crazy attack damage, but low attack speed. Alchemist, interesting hero, also too weak. We're going to get to him. Yeah, so first of all, I think Beastmaster needs more armor. Secondly, I think Quill Beasts, the lower HP summons, should be spell immune. Spell immune? And that means also dispel immune. As you may remember from my earlier rant, I hate permanently spell immune units normally. Destroyers and Breakers and Dryads. I hate that they're permanently spell immune, but at least you can't mass them. You can mass those, but you cannot mass summons. There's always a limit to how many summons you can have. In the Beastmaster's case, it's at most 3 Quill Beasts at the same time. It's at most 2 Bears at the same time. The Bear is very high HP already. I think the Bear is okay. He's not great, but he's okay. I don't think the Bear should be spell immune, but the Quill Beast should be. Since the Beastmaster is so reliant on his summons, I think he should have 1 spell immune summon, and that is the Quill Beast. Then, of course, in exchange, we have to decrease HP drastically. 35% here, I suggest maybe even 40%, because you don't want to have those endlessly in the bank. You can't kill them, and you can't dispel them. But if they have their HP significantly decreased, and the Beastmaster doesn't just get ultra countered by dispel all the time, I think that's interesting. You can still kill them, you can still snipe them, they're low HP, but they are way more reliable for the Beastmaster. And then, the Hawk. Oh man, I hate the Hawk ability. Hawk ability is kind of like POTM Owl ability. It's just stupid. Level 1 Hawk. It can't attack. It just looks at things. It has a 70-second cooldown and duration. You have to wait 70 seconds to use the Hawk, which is so boring. It does nothing on level 1. It does a little bit of something on level 2. It's not even much. It's just like 20 damage or something. It's like a destroyer with less attack speed on a 70-second cooldown. That is dispellable. And on level 3, it actually gets really good. But good luck getting level 5. Hawk has the big problem that it's a flying unit. And if you get a flying unit on level 1, it has to be bad. You know, that's kind of how it has to be. So this is a design problem on the unit. I think we should drastically change the Hawk. Replace the Hawk ability with a new ability, Death from Above. I think it would be cool if the Hawk was a summon that you summon, but it only lasts a short while, like 5 seconds or something. You summon the Hawk, that one is invulnerable, but only 5 seconds, and you can't control it. You click it in the direction, the Hawk is spawned, and then it flies in that direction straight for like, what's the range? I'm not sure about the range exactly. Let's say 700 range, 800 range maybe, so pretty long. And in that range, the Hawk will damage everything in its path, all units. Biological, mechanical, flying, ground. It will attack all those units, not with a normal magic attack, but with spell damage. But the damage strikes when the Hawk hits them. And I want this to be like a thunderstorm. You summon the Hawk, and it's like a carpet bomber, you know? There's this, let's say there's this footy squad on the ground, and you summon the Hawk, it's like brrr. It's like lightning from the gods. Boom! So much damage. Also, we have to introduce a damage cap, of course, because we need damage caps, unfortunately. That shouldn't be much damage. It should be only like 60, 140. That's very low for an AoE ability. But, and this is the fun thing, so first of all, it's this lightning spectacle, right? There's lightning everywhere. Brrr, he attacks all those dudes in the range at the same time. The Hawk is like, is that like a carrier? I know. It's like lasers coming out from the Hawk and hitting everyone for a certain amount of damage and mini stunning them for 1 second. It's a tiny stun, but it's still cool to stun everything for a short while. Now, this is one of my more wild suggestions, I suppose, but I think it's fun. I think we should remember also that Warcraft shouldn't be only just purely balanced, it should also be fun. Playing should be fun, heroes should be fun, abilities should be fun. It's why mana burn is such bullshit, because it's anti-fun with less abilities. Anyways, enough about the mana burn. But speaking about mana, Beastmaster really struggles from low mana. He summons the bear, he runs low on mana. He summons the quill beast, he runs low on mana. This is an idea that is sometimes represented in MOBAs, not so much in Warcraft. What if we balance this ability more around a cooldown and less around mana? So what if the cooldown is big, 40 seconds here, but mana is really low with only 20 seconds? So you can basically always use it. It doesn't cost much mana, but you're really gated on the cooldown. If you have lots of mana on the Farseer, for example, you can do way more damage than this, but the Beastmaster is a very mana-starved hero. This also means, the way I see it, you play Hawk most of the time, because the Quill Beasts drain your mana a lot, the Bear drains your mana a lot, but then this Death from Above ability, the Carpet Bomber, where it's this lightning show, which I think would be so fun, it doesn't tax your mana so much you can use it. And that also feeds into the exciting nature of it, right? It looks exciting, it sounds exciting, it's all this lightning going on. You can't spam it all the time. It's pretty rare. It's a 40-second cooldown. I'm not sure if this is exactly the right number. Maybe it should be 40, maybe it should be 30, maybe it should be 50. I'm not 100% sure on these numbers, but I'm pretty sure this will be fun. This will be fun and way more exciting than the stupid Hawk that does basically nothing. Yeah. All right, next up. Alchemist. Tragic hero right now in the meta. All of his abilities are kind of bad. We sometimes see him if you really, really, really desperately need healing. Human Mass Air, for example, with Dragonhawk, Griffin Strat against Night Elf. They play Alchemist, and I think only they at the moment. Sometimes against Warden. If you really desperately need healing, the Alchemist is there for you. But Acid Bomb is weak, and especially Chemical Rage is so weak. Chemical Rage has so much potential. First of all, let's get Acid Bomb out of the way. Acid Bomb, I think, is also way too weak. It does a little bit of damage, as you know, and also armor reduction. Armor reduction is the more impactful thing, but also that, I think, is too weak. It's 3, 4, 5 armor reduction right now. I think we can pump up those numbers real nice to 3, 5, 7, and that would make that a lot better. And Chemical Rage. Chemical Rage is so cool. It transforms the Alchemist. It makes him speedy like a race car. It makes him powerful for a short duration. But wait a minute. When you play him, all of a sudden you notice it's not that powerful. It's not that strong. I'm taking tons of damage. This isn't doing anything. Alchemist was supposed to be a good right-clicker alternative to other heroes. Of course, we all know the number 1 and 2 right-clickers in the game. The stat monsters, the demon, and the Blademaster. Amazing armor, amazing damage, amazing attack speed, amazing recovery because of damage and armor. They don't recover well because of damage, but they make the opponent, they make it hard for him to recover because of all that damage. Now, the Alchemist shouldn't have the same amount of armor, shouldn't have the same amount of attack speed. This is his specific nature. He is low armor, he is low attack speed unless he uses the ability, but he needs something else to be competitive. I think he could be a decent first hero. If you want to have a good right-clicker first hero, that guy needs to scale from the early game. You cannot add him as a third hero and hope that at some point he gets strong. He needs to be creeping early, leveling up, getting items, and getting stronger over the course of the game. Alchemist could be a decent first hero option, especially for Night Elf, probably, because they are normally the best with Tavern heroes. We want to have another good right-clicker. Please, Blizzard. And Chemical Rage is the thing to target here. So, the number one most annoying thing with Chemical Rage is it only lasts 15 seconds, and then half the time you're okay, and half the time you're absolute trash. I think we have to pump up those numbers on duration level 2 and 3. Like I suggest here, increasing the duration by 3 seconds on level 2 and another 3 seconds on level 3. Now, if you have a level 5 Alchemist with level 3 Chemical Rage, that's a lot of duration, lots of attack speed, all of a sudden a serious right-clicker. Of course, also, you give up a lot with that. You're spending your level 3 ability just on right-click and not on something like Acid Bomb or Heal Spray. I don't think that's enough, though. The issue with the Alchemist, especially when you play him as a first hero, he has 1 point of armor. He takes so much damage from everything. And the way healing works is, healing always gives you the flat amount of healing that you receive, so it has great interplay with armor. That's again why Demon and Blade are so good. The healing from self The healing from Moonwells is crazy efficient. The healing from Rejuve, crazy efficient. They are way better at getting healed, way more efficient than all other heroes. The Alchemist is the worst example of this because of all that low armor. He needs, in my opinion, inbuilt self-sustaining healing from Chemical Rage. This is also not an idea I came up with by myself, by the way. Here again, I stole the idea, or you could say I got inspired by Dota. In Dota, also Alchemist with Chemical Rage, which there is his ult, has the HP regen. Of course, also the Paladin, I had a similar idea, as you may remember from the start of this. In Dota, it's something crazy. In Dota, it's like 20 or 30 or 40 hit points per second. Those numbers are, of course, way too high in Warcraft 3, so we gotta be a little bit more conservative here. With level 1 Chemical Rage, you would heal 45 HP, which is not much, but it's a little bit of something that can help you. On level 2, it's 90 HP. Ah, that's nice, right? It nicely doubles with the duration increase as well. 90 HP on level 2 suddenly. And then on level 3, how much is that again? 147. Right? Yeah, 147. So it's a little bit more than 45 increase there. And also it's nicely symmetrical. Do you see that? 357 acid bomb armor, 357 HP per second regen. This would put the Alchemist in an interesting spot. I don't think it would be too strong because Chemical Rage has always been absolute trash. And it needs a big buff. This is undoubtedly a huge buff. I'm not even trying to debate that. This is a huge buff for Chemical Rage. Which it needs, because it's like the worst ability in the game along with Farsight. Alright. So much for the Alchemist. As you can see, these 2 stars again indicate that I think these changes would be really good for the meta. Next up, the Dark Ranger. Oh, the poor Dark Ranger. Previous patch, before the newest version, the Dark Ranger actually saw some play. The life drain was really good. Then the people were complaining on Reddit and Blizzard and on Reddit and the forums. And Blizzard swiftly nerfed the Dark Ranger, and there she was, useless again. Sag. Now, same as with Life Drain, we can buff the Dark Ranger here in the quality of life in the field department. We should change the Life Drain damage tick interval. Remember how I said the Siphon mana should be draining, ticking every 0.5 seconds? Same for the Life Drain, every 0.5 seconds, just like Immolation was changed a while ago, which also made that a lot more responsive. Same here. And then we have to make this divisible by 2 once again. The Life Drain DPS, we can give the level 1 Life Drain a little bit of a boost because it's a bit weak, and we can give a big boost to levels 2 and 3, because even when the Dark Ranger was good, now Blizzard, I hope you were watching those games, last patch, when Dark Ranger was good, Life Drain still scaled like trash. It was so bad. Understandably, because it went from 30 to 45. That's only a 50, I almost said 15. Only a 50% increase. We gotta pump those numbers up. Like I show here, 32 to 56 to 80. And then we're talking. And then the Dark Ranger Life Drain might finally be playable again. Continuing on. Let's do the Panda first because my camera is in the way here. Panda. Really cool hero, very fun, and very, very bad at the moment. Blizzard decided that the Breath of Fire, the way it was not good, because the visuals of the Breath of Fire, cone, fire damage, did not fit the area of effect damage. They didn't like that. Like I pointed out earlier with the Demolisher. Apparently, when visuals don't fit the effect, they don't like that. So, they didn't increase the size of the visual, they rather decrease the size of the AoE, which is very confusing to me. Blizzard, the easiest way you can fix this is just make the visual of the Breath of Fire bigger, and then make the AoE fitting for it the way it used to be. Or just restore the old Breath of Fire, where the AoE is bigger than the visuals, but I guess you don't want to do that. Okay, if you want to do neither of those things, then we have to amp up the damage a lot. If the Breath of Fire is really short range, I think that's kind of okay, sort of. I don't like it too much. It feels worse to play, but it's kind of okay. It gives the Panda the special role. He's an AoE hero, but very short range. He's like the sort of shotgun, kind of a blast hero. But then, the numbers need to properly reflect that. If you really want to have that Breath of Fire being so low range, so shotgun-like, then we need to buff those numbers a lot. 10% isn't enough. I'm suggesting going up by 10, 20, 30 damage here. That might not even be enough, but this is the minimum we need to do. Breath of Fire is way too low damage right now. Also, I think move speed should be increased. This is not a big increase. This is the treatment that many heroes have had lately. But if your Breath of Fire range is so small, like it is now, then at least you need to have high move speed to get in the right position, to get close enough to land a decent Breath of Fire, which is damn hard to land right now with a weird cone and the short range and all that. And the Panda is also the hero where I want to give him the healing reduction effect. I mentioned casters before that should have that healing reduction. I think this should be a tool in the game, like I said before. With how strong healing is all across the game, I think there should be more counters to it. So, Drunken Haze. Drunken Haze, of course, is a dispel. A debel. I feel like my brain is getting fried here. Okay, Drunken Haze is a debuff that can be dispelled. And that's the way I think it should be. Healing reduction, for the most part, should be dispellable. So, how about we give it to Drunken Haze? Drunken Haze is also too expensive in mana. Let's bring that down by 10. Let's give it healing reduction. And let's increase the duration just by a little bit. Just a smidge, by 1 second. If you know why that is, then congratulations, you are an expert viewer. This is to make the double ignition easier and better. Right now, the way it is, you can use Drunken Haze, Breath of Fire, ignite the targets, and if you're very fast with the next Breath of Fire, you can ignite it again. But the window to do that is like less than a second. It's a little bit too tough to pull that off. If we increase the duration on Drunken Haze, then we can make that a little bit easier to hit that double breath ignition, which is so cool. Incredible efficiency. That could be fun. All right. Fire Lord, very straightforward. He's decent. He's actually the most tavern played hero right now, but he's not really very good. I think we buffed the soul burn a little bit by reducing the cooldown. So you can use more soul burn against key targets. And also lava spawn mana cost can be brought down a little bit. 150 mana for a summon for a non-int hero is crazy high. I would say that's a bit too high. Incinerate seems fine, in my opinion. Tinker. Very fun hero, very interesting, not very strong. If we had talked about him like 3 months ago, we would have said nobody ever plays him. Nowadays, some Night Elves against Human have been starting to play him in 2-base versus 2-base. Pocket Factory first and then Rockets later. So he's been seeing a little bit of play, but only in that one niche scenario, only really to cancel Blizzard with Rockets. So I think we could give the Tinker a little bit of a buff as well. Increase that Pocket Factory to make it better for fighting. And give him a bit of engineering upgrade bonus. Inbuilt HP regen. Once again, I come back to this point. Why is the DK played all the time? Why is the Demon played all the time? Why is the Blade played all the time? Because they can heal well. Because they're efficient with healing. They have high armor, good damage, auras in some cases, high move speed. Tinker has none of those things. Not high damage, not great. Actually, he does have great armor. Excuse me. He does have great armor. But not really great damage. He could really benefit from some internal HP regen from engineering upgrade. It also makes sense thematically, right? He's an engineer. He fixes things. He's got the engineering on himself. Meep, 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 meep. He's using those wrenches. He's passively healing himself up slowly. I think that's cool. Also, it nicely fits the nature of the passive. It gives a little bit of damage. It gives a little bit of movement speed. It gives a little bit of HP regen. I think this really could help the Tinker a lot. Pocket Factory also is such an interesting ability. It is basically the prototype of StarCraft 2 force fields. You can manipulate the layout of the map, the terrain of the battlefield. Really cool. Really, really cool idea. But it's just a little bit too weak. A little bit too easy to kill, especially come mid-game, late game. So that's why I suggest the HP increase. All right. Pit Lord. Man, Pit Lord, weird hero, right? He seems like a great hero on paper. He's got great stats. as we pointed out earlier, 58 stats nowadays between the different attributes. But he's still bad. How is that? I think the issue is for the Pit Lord, while he can cleave, he's got that big attack wind-up. I'm not sure that we want to change that. I feel like that's a key thing of the Pit Lord. Getting into the right spot is hard, but then when you're in the right spot, cleaving could be good. I think, though, getting into the right spot in the first place seems a bit tough. Pit Lord, he's a melee hero, but with cleave, he's hitting so much in the back as well, right? So I feel like if he had a little bit more range, more than just normal heroes, give him melee range, plus 50, plus 40, plus 30. I'm not 100% right. I'm not 100% sure what the right number here is, but somewhere there, between 30 to 50 bonus range, to give him a little bit more of that cleave oomph and that special role, I think that could be cool. Also, we never see Rain of Fire. We never see Hall of Terror. If we bring down the mana cost there a little bit, I think that would also make sense. Speaking of mana, the Naga. Naga has one of the worst abilities in the game with the mana shield. Basically never used. Of course, she has a Fork Lightning and a Cold Arrow that she normally benefits from. I think we should buff the mana shield so that when you have mana shield active, it gives you a bonus mana regen. I think that makes sense with the ability. 1.5, 3, 4.5. This is roughly half of Brilliance Aura that only works for the Naga and none of the other units. Let's be honest, the shield itself is hardly ever useful. But I think that's cool. I think that would give players finally a reason to consider mana shield. And let's be honest, mainly Night Elves. Night Elves can put the orb on the Naga late game. And this would be a good Night Elf late game buff. Which I think isn't a bad idea if we consider that Dryads should be getting nerfed late game with the attack upgrade no longer aligning with bears and everything else. Alright, general changes. Tower Kill Punish. At the moment in the game, if you kill something with the tower, you get 0 experience from it. I'm not sure, but I think Blizzard did this because back in Reign of Chaos, people were creeping with towers. That must have been a funny time. You send workers to a red camp, you build towers there, you pull out the creeps, you kill the creeps, boom, you're level 3. Kind of funny. Of course, that wouldn't work anymore these days. People know how to scout and punish and so on. Funny time that must have been, though. And I think that's why this change was made. I think this is not good for beginners and not good for expansion play. Make some towers at the expansion, be safe, and still get some experience. Now, there should be some punish on this. If you deny something with a tower, you shouldn't get full experience. If you deny something with the Ancient of War, you shouldn't get full experience. But if a noob Night Elf player denies something with the Ancient of War, should he really lose all of the experience? I feel like that's a bit too drastic. I think it would be much healthier if you only lose 50% experience. Next up, the Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest, of course, was heavily nerfed in the most recent patch. In an attempt to make summon heroes more playable, the Shadow Priest was nerfed. That was successful. But the unintended consequence was other heroes became way less playable. Things like Dreadlord first rely on a fast Shadow Priest for healing. Things like Warden and MK and Panda, maybe if you're playing Panda somehow. All those heroes that are harder to pull off in a non-super standard game, they all really heavily rely on Shadow Priest healing. We need to give the Shadow Priest back at the normal time at 2 minutes, right away when you may creep the Merc Camp first. Having the buff, or having the nerf rather, on the Dispel on the Abolish Magic, it was decreased from 250 damage to 150 damage. I think that's fine. I think we can keep that, absolutely. That still gives more room to those summoner heroes, even against Shadow Priest. But the stock delay, which means the time at which the Shadow Priest arrives, that was nerfed too much. We need to get that back to 1 minute 20 to again give more different heroes a chance to shine, and not just always Archmage, Farseer, Blade, DK, Demon every game. That would be nice. Okay, next up. This is one of my most risky suggestions. I'm not 100% sure that this is a good idea. Almost all of the changes before, I think, are a good idea. This one here is a bit risky. I looked at the Goblin shop, and I feel like there's 3 boring, useless items in here. Periapt of Vitality. No one ever buys. Potion of Invisibility. This is sometimes bought when you have no map control and you're trying to steal an item. Sometimes. I feel like this is very boring though. I think this doesn't provide much. And speaking of not providing much, Scroll of Protection also, we never see that because everyone always has Dispel. And even if there's no Dispel, the scroll still isn't very good. I think we can replace all these items. First of all, Greater Clarity Potion. This one restores 200 mana, 150 gold, kind of like 2 clarities. And that gives mana access to heroes who might need it, who can't get it sometimes other ways. This again enables more mana casting heroes, not just DK Demon Blade Farseer all the time, right? Other heroes are playable. Oops. Then also Scroll of Mana. 250 gold, 100 mana. Now, I could see that this might be insane with some strats. I'm not sure. This is why I'm saying I'm a bit tentative about these changes. If you guys all say, this sucks, this is crazy, then I will say, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe this does suck. Although I think it will be interesting. I think it will be interesting. Much more interesting than these items that we currently have. Especially Periapt. Nobody ever buys Periapt. We should certainly at least replace this thing. And Orb of Fire. This again brings me back to my healing reduction point. Orb of Fire was the first item to introduce healing reduction. I think that was a great idea, great mechanic. I think we should build on it. I think it would be great to have an orb in a shop in the middle. If you don't like your orb for the game, or you want to have another orb effect in your army, or you need some anti-heal desperately, that orb can be your window. But it should be a pretty late arrival, 11 minutes 20. Most of the big items become available at 7 minutes 20. Invo Potion, Heal Scroll, and all that. 7 minutes 20 is the second daytime. Then the second nighttime is 11 minutes 20. I think that's when Orb should be available. And Clarity Potion. Clarity Potion. This item is indeed very good for caster heroes that I think we should be paying more attention to. More mana-hungry heroes. I think it should be made a little bit cheaper to be a little bit more accessible. But most importantly, increase the stock max to 3. So there's a maximum of 3 items in the shop. This is for tier 3 triple hero play. One big issue when playing tier 3 triple hero is you run out of mana, you can't get all your mana back. This was always the most obvious for Farseer headhunters. You have after a fight, right? You're taking a fight against Undead, let's say. You did well. You maybe won the fight, maybe it's even, you're falling back, you're healing up, heal selves, and clarities. But then, Farseer's out of mana, TC's out of mana, Shadowhunter's out of mana. Who do you give the 2 clarities to? There's only 2 in the shop. You have to choose. Some other army compositions don't have to worry about that. AM late game doesn't need the clarity potion. Demon Hunter rarely needs a clarity potion. But there should be 3 in stock here, in my opinion. So you can play 3 mana-hungry heroes. This also means that human can maybe play less with Archmage if there's 3 clarities to give it to other heroes when they need it. I think this would be a really good change for the game as well, for tier 3 triple hero play. With maybe other hero options. All right. This is the most straightforward slide here. I think this is very obvious. Pendant of Energy is too weak. We should buff it up. Periapt of Vitality is too weak. We should buff it up. Mana Potion. I think this one is a bit too weak right now as well. 200 mana only. I think we should get that up a little bit to 220. It used to be 300 mana. That was definitely too good. Then it was 250 mana. 250 might be okay, might not be okay, I'm not sure. But 200 I would say is definitely too low. And also I agree with Lynn and Neo. I think the health, the big heal potion is a bit too strong right now with 500. Bring that down to 440. Like Lynn, our orc god, also said. And the same, of course, for Mana Stone and Health Stone. Those have the same damage, the same number values at the moment. Also bring those a bit closer together. And the neat thing here is, by the way, this nicely mirrors the small healing potion and mana potion from your shop. Because small healing potion costs the same as small mana potion. Small healing potion is 250 hit points. Small mana potion is 125 hit points, so it's 50% the mana potion. And this would be 50% as well. 50% mana of what the heal potion is. I think that's nice. You know, nice little bit of pretty symmetry. And the Cloak of Flames, I think this is by far the worst red camp item these days. Every other red camp item pretty good except for the cloak, in my opinion. Alright, I think this is the last slide. Yes, slide 24, boys, we made it. So, the last slide, the previous slide was very straightforward with what items are too strong / too weak. This is a lot more creative. This is new items. I would love to see new items. I feel like this is where we can easily increase excitement and fun for the game. You guys probably remember that the Ring of the Archmage was added to the drop pool not too long ago. The Ring of Superiority was added as well, and that gave a little bit more item variety, a little bit more chances for drops. I think that's great. I think that's beautiful. I think if there's lots of options from a creep camp to drop, that's wonderful. And there's one standout issue with drop tables, that is the Gloves of Haste camp. Always the same items. Every goddamn game, the same items. It's just 3 item drops. Here we are on Wikipedia. Let's take a look at the drop tables, shall we? Level 1 permanent items, we have 5 different item drops. That's okay. I don't think that's perfect. That's still rather few items, but it's okay, I guess. And then level 2 permanent items, 3. We only have 3 possible drops. This is ridiculous. This is terrible. This is so boring, way too deterministic, so bland. We need way more drops than this. Looking at level 3, we got way more drops. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's great. 7 or 8 items. I think that is the perfect number for a table. Level 4, look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We got 9 drops on level 4. Isn't that pog? Level 5 also, 9 drops. Or is it 8 drops? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 drops! That's amazing. Just level 2. Level 2 especially. That is the biggest culprit here. This is ridiculous. 3 drops only from the same drop table. That is pathetic. Blizzard, if you guys made this game in 2003 or whenever, and you're a developer and saying, okay, Mr. Thornton, you're in charge of designing the drop tables. He's like, I got these ideas and I got these ideas, and this is the presentation. Here's the PowerPoint. And then you're like, wait, what? We got 9 items from level 4 drop table, but 3 from level 2. Why is that, Mr. Thornton? And what is the reason? What is the answer? This is horrible. Mr. Thornton, please do better. We need to do better than this. And I have ideas, of course. So, level 1 permanent item. This is the Cloak of Shadows. I think here also, we don't need items desperately, but I think we should add them. This also is relevant balance-wise, by the way. In the early game, the impact that Slippers and also Mantle can have are huge. On the right hero, Mantle and Slippers are extremely good. Kind of OP, to be honest. But it's okay to have some very strong, exciting drops. Where things get hairy, though, is if you get 2 or 3 in a row. If you get an early game where you get 2 Slippers or 3 Slippers on the right hero, it almost seems unlosable. It's crazy how good it is. If we increase the drop pool from this item category, the chances of getting 2 or 3 of the perfect item drastically go down, right? And yeah, here I think we can introduce 3 items. Longbow is going to be an item that only works on ranged heroes and increase their attack range by 100. Nimble Striders, an item that only works on melee heroes, improves the turn rate, which means how quickly they are turning, by 0.2. That's actually very good. That makes them way more maneuverable. And Goblin Nightscope, already in the game, increases your night vision similar to Ultra Vision. Now, of course, if you get it on the wrong hero here, this item doesn't do anything, which already is kind of the way it works right now. Cloak sometimes doesn't do anything. Gauntlet sometimes don't do anything. Mantle sometimes doesn't do anything. If it's a very low-level item, I think it's fine. If those items sometimes don't do anything, like here, they literally would not. And then, of course, Gloves of Haste. We really, Blizzard, please, we really need more item drops from this. And it's pretty easy to just give some stat boosting, stat increasing items. So from this camp, we have attack speed, damage, armor. It's very easy to go on from there. We could give it a mini Sobi Mask for mana regen, mini Ring of Regen for a little bit of HP regen, mini Orb of Corruption for a little bit of armor reduction. That would be cool. Finally giving other races as well access to armor reduction. Of course, it's a small camp. It can't be much armor reduction. It can only be 1.5, I would say. Also, it cannot be a really orb. You can't attack air units with that orb. That would be way too good. So just, I don't know, Rusty Axe or something, that just gives 1.5 armor reduction. Mini Rune Bracers for a little bit of spell resistance. And also Aether Lens, another item that I stole the idea from Dota, which increases your cast range by 100. That would also be very interesting. Then level 2 charged items. That is the Sentry Ward camp. I suggested this before. I think a tiny farm would be super fun. Many, many years ago, there was this Chinese tournament where we had a special map, and there they had a tiny farm. That camp always reliably gave you a tiny farm, then you could just pop it down on the map. It gives you scouting. And of course, many of these items from this camp give you scouting. That's kind of the nature of this camp with Sentry Wards and Crystal Ball and Wand of Illusion. Now, some people have said this is too good. You can be really annoying with this. You can, for example, put a farm and place it somewhere where the opponent wants to expand. And I can see that point. Maybe that's annoying, but I think it's worth trying out. This is, again, me coming back to fun. Isn't that super fun? You get a tiny farm. You can place that somewhere. You can mess with your opponent. And it's just a farm. How much hit points is that? 600 or something? I think that's cool. I think that's fun. If it proves to be too strong, then maybe we have to remove it. But I think that's cool, man. That's just me. Also, give it a possibility to give 100 gold coin or 70 lumber bundle just to expand that pool. This drop pool is also very small with only 4 item drops. Next up, level 3 charged items. This is the Scroll of the Beast. I think they're also, it's only 5 items dropping. Not very interesting. We've seen them so much over the years. And what I think is a little bit out of whack, out of balance, so to say, is we got 3 potions there. Invul, healing, mana potion, but only 3 potions, right? 1 scroll and 1 wand. Why is that? Why do you have so many potions but only 1 scroll and 1 wand? I think it would be cool if we had another scroll, like I say here, Scroll of Alacrity. Gives 15% move speed, 15% attack speed, lasting 45 seconds, just like the Scroll of the Beast. And that Wand of Invisibility. 2 charges, same as the Wand of Mana Stealing, also 2 charges. Can cast any friendly target invisible, including the wearer. I tried to come up with some other ideas for Wand as well. What would be really cool here, really cool, really fun at least, would be Wand of Blinking, where your hero can blink somewhere for 2 charges. That would be sick. That would also be very broken, though, probably. If you do that with, like, Immolation Demon Hunter into a human main base, probably not a great idea, although it would be fun. So if anybody can come up with better ideas for wand usages, I'm all ears. But Wand of Invisibility would be very safe, because it can be a playmaking ability, but there's also counters to it. We are familiar with Invis even from the early game. Of course, this can be an early game creep, as we know. Shadow Meld, Windwalk. Do I have anything else Invis in the early game? I guess not, but we certainly have those 2 things. Yeah, so I think that would be very safe. Wand of Invisibility. To again give a little bit more life to that drop table. And lastly, level 4 drop table consumable. That is the Mana Stone. Tome of Experience. I love the Tome of Experience. Now, of course, many years ago, this used to be part of the drop table of the level 2 Strength Tome. That was completely ridiculous. You could either get +2 Strength or plus 150 Experience. That was insane. The difference in power, the difference of impact in the RNG was absolutely insane. And we removed Tome of Experience as it should have been. But I think a better question to ask would have been, okay, considering the strength of that drop, the power of the Tome of Experience, instead of removing it, where can we place it? where's the right place to put that item? In what drop table? It certainly isn't the +2 strength tome, right? So let's go up. Is it the Sentry Ward camp? Nope, definitely not. It would be way too strong for the Sentry Ward camp. Is it the Scroll of the Beast drop? Nope, definitely not. And of course it has to be a consumable drop because the tome is consumed for experience, right? Not the Scroll of the Beast. You get that way too easy, way too early. That wouldn't be good. Then Mana Stone. Is that the right drop table for the Tome of Experience? I think yes. It cannot really be crept super early in the game. In the mid-game, kind of, yeah. But normally not too early. And if you're aware of it, you can look for it and look for a Creepjack and so on. In the mid-game for a second hero, it can be a big boost. But let's not forget, if you get the Tome of Experience, that also means you don't get a big consumable item that can be really helpful. Or a lot of gold that you get from selling the item, if it's not very useful. So it comes with a drawback. It still is exciting, though. It is the golden tome on the ground. This used to be our, well, I guess it still is, our sub-badge on Back to Warcraft, because the tomes are exciting. The Tome of Experience, especially, is so exciting. I would like to see a little bit of excitement and fun being brought back with this and other things that I suggested. And also we could expand that drop table even more with a greater replenishment potion. That is like the normal replenishment, doubled, and that's already in the game, by the way. Now, I'm not sure here about balance, if this is too good or too weak. Because, of course, you cannot use the replenishment in the middle of a fight. It's going to get cancelled. But recovering 400 HP and 150 mana is really nice. And you can use that a lot on heroes, often in the game. But is that way worse than a health stone or a mana stone would be? I'm not sure. By the way, to get back to the Tome of Experience, the question of where does it drop properly? The next higher level drop table for this, level 5 charged item, would be Scroll of Restoration. Scroll of Restoration, Rock Golem, Stone Token. And I would say clearly there it would be underpowered. I think it fits well here. If people all say, though, that's insane, you're off your meds, then okay, fine, maybe not. About the Greater Replenishment Potion, by the way, this is the last time I'm going to go to a different site here. So this is still the archive of the old Blizzard Battle.net where we see lots of consumables. Here also is the Greater Clarity Potion, by the way. Or here it's just called the Clarity Potion. We have that in the game. Like I said, I think it would be cool to have that in the Goblin shop. And here we have our very familiar Replenishment Potion. Apparently it used to be called Rejuvenation Potion. But this is the Replenishment Potion. No, wait, this one here. This one. Replenishment Potion that we have in the game at the Sentry Ward camp. Now, this is the one I'm suggesting for the Mana Stone camp. 400 hit points, 125 mana. If this is too weak of a drop for this camp, we could also go with this item here. Lesser Scroll of Replenishment. 250 hit points, 100 mana. For everybody. That one seems pretty damn good, though. I'm not 100% sure where the balance here stands. It's hard for me to judge. But I think this is where we can end the video. See you next time.